Okay, councillors, I'm informed by Mr Naylor that we have more than a quorum, so I'll declare the meeting open and begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and paying my respects to their elders, both past and present. I don't believe we have any new apologies received tonight from councillors. We've already granted a leave of absence to Councillor Porteous. There being no further apologies, unless anyone has any to offer, I'll go to the notice of webcasting for the benefit of the participants in tonight's meeting. For the members of the public gallery participating virtually, we'd like to notify you that these proceedings are broadcast live onto the internet and then recorded there for posterity. So there are legal ramifications to comments that you make in the public domain. With that, I'll now move that we suspend standing orders to conduct the deputy mayoral election. Councillor Drury will second that motion. Councillors will be aware that in the normal course of events, the deputy mayoral election would be conducted as an extraordinary meeting with the mayoral election. In this instance, for reasons that councillors are aware, the two don't align. So I'll move that way. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I assume that is unanimous. Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded against the motion? If not, I'll declare that carried. Councillors will need to resolve to hand over to the General Manager or, in his absence, if he's not in attendance, to the Manager of Administration in order to conduct the ballot. And I'll move that we do so and that the ballot be conducted by show of hands. Councillor Drury will, that the ballot be an open ballot conducted by show of hands. Councillor Drury will second that motion. I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I assume that is unanimous. Is there any councillor who wishes to object to that, who is against the motion? If not, that is carried unanimously. I'll now hand over to the General Manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We have nominations for Councillor Macri and Councillor Hesse. I'll simply ask for a show of hands. Those in favour of Councillor Macri.
It's Councillor Kiat, actually, I believe.
Sorry, Councillor Kiat. Those in favour of Councillor Macri. So I have Councillor Drury, Stamoulis, Passis, Iskander, McKenna, Macri, York, Byrne, Rossetti, and that adds up to, I think, a majority. Those in favour of the nomination for Councillor Kiat, can I have a show of hands, please? Councillors De Cruz, Lockie, Hesse. I can't see Councillor Kiat on my, sorry, Councillor Kiat. Have I caught everyone? Councillor
Yes,
Lockie?
I'm supporting my own nomination.
Thank you. I just hadn't seen you there. Ian, can you tell me what those numbers are? Because I don't have the screen.
Yes, I can. So we have, in favour of Councillor Kiat, we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you. And those in favour of Councillor Macri?
Who were the 4?
Is Councillor Steer in attendance? I'm just asking.
Not that I can see.
I can't see Councillor Steer in attendance.
And then the numbers in favour of Councillor Macri. Thanks, Ian.
The numbers in Councillor Macri is 9.
I just note that Councillor Steer has just entered the meeting. I don't know if she'll want to be recorded as voting on this item.
In the circumstances, I will allow that, given the wonders of technology. Councillor Steer, do you prefer Councillor Macri or Councillor Kiat? Councillor Steer?
I prefer Councillor Kiat. Councillor Kiat has my vote.
Thank you. So that is 9 votes to 4. I declare. So that is 9 votes to 4. I'm sorry, I can't hear that. I declare Councillor Macri elected as Deputy Mayor. Congratulations. Back to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much to the General Manager and congratulations to Councillor Macri on his election as Deputy Mayor of the Inner West. I'll move that we resume standing orders, seconded by Councillor Drury. All those in favour? Against? I assume that that's carried unanimously. Is there anyone in objection to that? No, that's carried unanimously. We'll move on to disclosures of interest. Councillors, are there any councillors who wish to disclose a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Passos.
I have a non-pecuniary interest. It's a relative that owns a property in College Street, Croydon. It's to do with the PLC request to buy part of Elizabeth Street. I don't believe I have a pecuniary interest, and I would like to participate.
Okay, so Councillor Passos is declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest for which item was it, Councillor?
I'm sorry, just bear with
Item
me.
5. Item 5.
Thank
Are there
you.
any other disclosures? No further disclosures. I'll move the acceptance of that.
Oh, there, this is Councillor Steer. I've got
Yep.
a disclosure, non-significant, non-pecuniary for the item 5 as well. My daughter attended PLC but left 10 years ago. So I have no further involvement with that school.
I don't think that's remotely close to a conflict of interest, Councillor Steer, but thank you for disclosing it. So Councillor Steer is also erring on the safe side and disclosing a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest. Are there any other further disclosures? If not, I'll move that they be accepted, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. I'll ask councillors and members of the gallery to please join me in a moment of quiet contemplation. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 8th of September 2020. Are there any clarifications or corrections to those minutes?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Passos.
Yes, it has that I voted for the condolence motion for Mr. Councillor Skander and myself. I wasn't in attendance. I would have voted for it anyway. And please just let me thank you and the councillors who personally contacted me on the loss of my mother, and the flowers from council. They're much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Passos. And on behalf of the council, I wish to express again our condolences to you, and very much so to Councillor Skander as well for the terrible losses that you've endured over recent weeks. All of our love and compassion goes out to you both.
Thank you.
Councillors, we'll move on to the, if there's no amendments to the minutes, Councillor York will move their adoption, seconded by Councillor Macri. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, I presume that is unanimous unless anyone wishes to be recorded voting against it. That has been carried unanimously. We'll move on to the public forum. Just before we begin hearing from the speakers in the public forum, I'll just let you know, under our code of meeting practice, we allow for 3 minutes with speeches for members of the public who are participating in the public forum, where we try to be very strict about people adhering to time, for the very good reason that if you're the last person to leave tonight or to finish tonight, you wish that everybody else had stuck to time. And one of the benefits of the difficult situation we're in with remote meetings is that we have found that everybody is sticking more dutifully to time since we've been meeting virtually. So I'll ask for your cooperation in doing that. I just don't have my computer screen before me at the moment. So Mr. Naylor, could I ask you to please read out the name of the first speaker?
Mayor, just before we do,
Yes.
I've become aware that Peter Munro from the Mud Crabs was not successful in being able to nominate to speak this evening in relation to the Marrickville Parklands issue. And look, I believe that Peter and the mud crabs have had more to do with the riparian zone and cleaning up that area than anyone else. And I think it would be a pity if we didn't hear him speak. So could I request we have one additional speaker on that matter, Peter Munro from the mud crabs?
Yeah, no problem. I think councillors will all be aware of Mr Munro and the excellent work of the mud crabs. It's not the first time that we've had individuals having difficulty registering. So I don't believe there's any problem with that. And I'm happy to rule that we'll hear from Mr Munro as well. I presume there's no objection. So with that, I've now got the registered speakers list before me. So the items for which we have registered speakers tonight are item 2, Marrickville Parklands and Golf Course Plan of Management. Item 3, Pride Centre Expression of Interest. Item 5, Elizabeth Street Road Closure and Sale. Item 7, Neighbourhood Centre Policy. And item 13, Uranium Mining Ban in New South Wales. So for the first item, item 2, the first registered speaker is Andrew Tye, President of the Marrickville Golf Club. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Darcy.
Please proceed.
Thanks. Look, I'm Andrew Tye. I'm the president of the Marrickville Golf Sporting and Community Club, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight against the proposed reduction of the course from 18 to 9 holes. I'd like to make a couple of very important observations. The first one is simple mathematics. If we lose half the golf course, we halve the amount of players that we can put on the golf course. Half the players means half the green fees. Now, 80% of our income comes from green fees. To lose that would be absolutely devastating for us financially, and we'd almost certainly have to close. But there's another very important consideration that we have to think about. We would also lose membership. Membership is a very vital part of being a club. Members want to play 18 holes. That's why they join golf clubs. 9-hole clubs don't attract members. And when you lose members, you lose the life of the club. You lose the energy and the vitality that clubs create. You're no longer a golf club. You're just a golf course. Now, without members, there'd be no vets competition. Every Thursday, 80 senior golfers congregate to enjoy what is for some of them the most important social interaction of the week. They get their health benefits from mental health benefits and physical. And there would be no vets competition if there was no members, and members aren't attracted to a 9-hole course. We have at our club 23% female membership. That's way above the national average of 19%. Now, due to the fact that we have a female golf pro who gives access to what is a male-dominated sport, and every year the Women's Committee Charity Day raises thousands of dollars of money for victims of domestic violence. That wouldn't happen without members, and 9-hole clubs don't attract members. Our Indigenous members, with the assistance of the council, are preparing to organise a reconciliation golf day. Now, that's where non-Indigenous and Indigenous golfers will play together to celebrate the rich First Nation history of the land. That doesn't happen without the help of the council and with membership. Members and council made the place what it is. 80 years ago, it was an empty space, but with passion and enthusiasm, we turned this land into what it is today. You can walk today along a mangrove-lined river, you can walk up a rocky landscape, you can stand on a sandstone shoulder, you can look west as the sun goes down over through a canopy of Port Jackson figs full of microbats. It's a fantastic environment, and the members are justifiably proud of it. But the members don't own it. We're not a private club. This club belongs to the community. We're a community club. It's owned by you guys, and it's owned by your neighbours and the kids down the street and mums and dads shopping in Marrickville Road. It's owned by the joggers and the cyclists and the dog walkers and the environmentalists that come onto the golf course. It's a fantastic environment, and it's changing over the years. Now, the community needs have changed, and so will the golf club. The community now needs is looking at things like community access, community gardens, community composting, community beehives, and all of that can be achieved on an 18-hole golf club. The club, with council and community support, can provide so many things for the community. In 20 years' time, we're 80 years old now. In 20 years' time, we're going to be celebrating our centenary. In 20 years, working together, the club and the council and the community could be celebrating the creation of an exceptional community asset. Now, whatever decision is made tonight will determine the future, not only for the club, but for the whole community. And I urge you to reject the recommendation for a 9-hole course and support our aspiration to create a golf sporting and community club of which we can all be proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ty, and thank you very much for sticking to time. There was just a little bit of confusion with the clock there, but thank you very much for your remarks. And also thank you very much for the work that you put in on a voluntary basis in upholding that terrific community institution. That brings us to the second speaker that we have for item 2 tonight, which is Edward Ryan of Marrickville. Edward, are you there?
Hi, yep, here, Darcy.
Over to you.
Cheers. Thanks for your time. I'm also speaking against the proposal to change the course to 9 holes. A few additional points to the last speaker. Look, the majority of residents voted to keep 18 holes when council surveyed us in 2019. So this plan is not in step with the community response. Now, I do appreciate that there wasn't much in the results, but other proposals that go to council require a lot more public support to get changes. So, for example, if you want any parking changes in your street, you need at least 65% of support from residents in order to get council to consider those changes. The golf course changes are significantly more intensive than a simple change to your parking in your street. And the fact that the majority of the community doesn't support this is just astounding to me that we are even considering this. The golf course is well used by a mixture of community members. I go down there on 3 p.m. for Saturday jazz with my family. I also play golf on there as a social member. I'm not a member, but I use the course frequently. I appreciate council needs more green recreation space, but carving up an existing community facility is not the way to go about it. It seems counterproductive to take existing green space, repurpose it at significant ratepayer cost, and then deliver more green space. Council should be concentrating on examining brownfield sites for adaptation and reuse rather than utilising existing green spaces. The master plan ignores the significant sporting fields and passive green spaces that already exist in the area. The existing passive green space is underutilised across the river. There simply isn't a need for more sporting fields or exclusive passive space in the South Marrickville area, and I live nearby. For example, the following facilities are either directly across the river from the golf course or right next to the course. Beeman Park, 6 full-size soccer fields, 2 mini fields, and significant passive space. Buruwan Park, 2 full-size soccer fields, 1 mini soccer field, and medium passive recreation space. Wills Ground, 1 rugby pitch. HJ Mahoney Park, 1 full-size AFL field, medium recreation area that council's recently upgrading. And then there's the Cooks River cycleway from Canterbury to Sydney Airport. In addition to that, there are a significant number of facilities surrounding the course, but not adjacent to the course, which includes Steel Park, 3 full-size soccer fields, Wanston Reserve, which is opposite Steel Park, which is a great passive space, Warren Park, which is in the Warren, which is an amazing passive recreation space, Gough Whitlam Park, which has a huge passive recreation space, plus a cricket pitch and a soccer field in winter, and Mackey Park, as you're all aware. I understand that several of these facilities are technically in the Canterbury Bankstown Council, but they are used extensively by Inner West Council residents in the area, including myself, for walking and for Saturday sport for my local soccer team. Community boundaries to use park and recreation facilities do not stop at council boundaries, especially in the city. Ignoring the existing facilities in the area will result in a poor outcome for those in the Inner West that need more community and sporting facilities in their area. For example, community members in Leichhardt, Roseville, Balmain that need more access to green passive space are unlikely to come to this part of the council given its distance. Inner West Council should work closer with Canterbury Council on a plan for this area and taking into account the significant passive green spaces and sporting fields that I've just mentioned that already exist along this great part of the river.
Edward, I'll ask you to conclude your remarks as your
No
time
worries.
is up.
Yep. To summarise, the land is currently accessible to anyone that wants to access it, including those that walk near the river. There are significant recreation and green facilities. There is a way to keep 18 holes and make the area more accessible. And in these crazy times of 2020, we need more community organisations and facilities like the golf club that can bring the community together. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Edward. Our next registered speaker is Richard Mallam of Glebe. Richard, are you there? Have we got Richard? No, we'll move on. If Richard's having technical difficulties, we can come back to him. That brings us to Justine Langford of Marrickville. Justine, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now.
Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I am a local resident. I've lived in the area for over 25 years, and I'm here to speak in favour of the proposal. The reason I'm speaking in favour is because I think community is very important. I believe that the recreational needs studies and the council community engagement have strongly supported that the community needs much more green open space. Also from the perspective of biodiversity. I'm a member of the Cooks River Valley Association, the River Canoe Club, Marrickville Heritage Society, and also Marrickville Golf Club. I'm a social member there. I don't play golf, but I think it's fabulous to have the golf course there. But I think times have moved on and that we do need to think about sharing space. The population has grown exponentially and the area is expected to grow by over 68,250 by 2041. So during COVID, if anyone who lives around this area would have seen how busy it was, how many residents were down alongside the river. The golf course occupies 1.6 kilometres straight along the side of the river. That means that's 1.6 k's, which is not safe for public to walk alongside. I understand that Andrew Ty has been doing a great job in terms of trying to improve accessibility around the golf course and working with the mud crabs, and that is really wonderful. But we sort of need to go beyond that and think more broadly. I think that that there's a major public safety issue currently, and it's not safe to walk along that area. What it also does by having that area unsafe to walk along is it actually puts council in danger because it is public land. It's land that we all own. The other aspect I wanted to highlight is that the pollution of the golf balls actually going into the water, the vast number of golf balls that go into the water and the toxicity of that for when they break down. So the impact on the waterways and on the life in the water. Then there's also all the chemicals that are used on the course to actually try and keep it green, and the water that's coming out of Dibble Waterhole. It's something around the club having a fairly small membership. I think that a 9-hole course can work, and I would totally support that. And I think that actually it could be beneficial to the club. A lot of the members don't live in the local area, so this doesn't impact them on the same way. But I think that it could actually be a win-win for the golf course. And I think it would be a major win for biodiversity as well. So I really appreciate your time, and I really hope that we can have a successful outcome for the local environment and for the local community. It shouldn't come down to politics, Labor versus Green.
Justine, your time's expired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bridget Cleaver of Dulwich Hill.
Hi everyone, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Bridget Cleaver and my family and I have lived along the Cooks River for over 25 years. I use the river every day walking my dog, running, cycling and leisure walking. I also belong to a group called the Mullets where we kayak the river and clean up the rubbish. I'm also a member of the Cooks River Valley Association. I applaud Council's recommendation to return some of the golf course parkland back to local residents for a number of very important reasons. The Inner West is desperate for green space. There is a severe shortage of parkland for residents to enjoy. I'm down on the river every day, and particularly now with COVID, it doesn't matter what time of day, it is packed with so many people, parents with their kids, elderly people walking, people fishing, kids playing, cyclists knocking you over, but that's a totally different story, runners, people doing native regeneration work, people walking their dogs. I rarely see my neighbours on my street. That's because they are down at the river enjoying it. It's the Inner West spiritual home. It means so much to us. I do empathise with the golfers that they are losing part of their course, but they also need to recognise the Inner West is bursting at the seams with more housing development being built. Surely you don't want to prevent young families from enjoying the river. No one is taking the golf course from you. It is only being reduced. Surely you can appreciate that there are only a limited number of golfers in comparison to the many thousands of residents who desperately need green space to enjoy the outdoors, to be healthy and happy. Surely you don't want to deprive them of this. It is about being a good and responsible citizen, recognising the needs of the community around you and sharing public space. Secondly, I clean the river on a weekly basis and have done so for many years. In only 4 weeks, I have collected over 100 golf balls from the Cooks River, and this is from Wave Rock. So I don't know if you can see the golf balls. Here they are here. And it's also a significant Aboriginal site. I have never once seen a golfer ever go down to the mangroves to collect their missing golf balls, ever. I have, however, experienced being nearly concussed by flying golf balls, despite this area being a walking track for the local community. I have also been abused by a number of golfers for being down there. For my safety, I have moved to other areas to clean up rubbish. My partner and I often walk the golf course very early in the morning, late at night, as we recognise it is unsafe to do so at other times. This again has not prevented golfers aiming their balls at me and my partner, and my bulldog has been hit several times. I think I can say I'm not very enamoured by golfers. To think that some of the golf course parkland will be returned to the locals to enjoy thrills me to bits. Council's recommendations for the possibility of more sports spaces, revegetating areas to attract biodiversity is not only exciting, but crucial in the light of climate change. I love going down to the Parklands on the weekends to watch the middle-aged, overweight old blokes play soccer and believe they are as good as David Beckham. I love watching the littlies barely 2 feet high, laughing and kicking balls bigger than them. I also love seeing young women being comfortable in their bodies, running around playing soccer. This brings tears to my eyes. We need to see more of this. More people running around playing soccer. We need to see more people exercising and enjoying their parklands. Imagine seeing even more pelicans, ducks and bird life on the river and parklands. To return some of the golf course back to nature.
If you can conclude your remarks, your time's expired.
Sure. Just to conclude, please, councillors, when you vote today, please consider the needs of all residents, human, our beautiful local wildlife and vegetation, and not just a few golfers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, that takes us on to the second item for which there are registered speakers tonight. That's item 3, Pride Centre expression of interest. The first speaker is Carly Stanley of St Peters.
Sorry, Councillor Byrne, there was the
Darcy.
other speaker that Councillor
Darcy, there
Drury.
was one further speaker.
Yep, okay, thank you for that. Mr Munro, are you there? Mr Munro, are you there?
Yes. Right, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
My name's Peter Munro, and I'd like to begin by thanking Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. I know this is an unusual circumstance, but I appreciate that I've been allowed to speak. I'll be speaking against the motion. I'm not a golfer, I don't play golf, but I've coordinated the Wave Rock bush regeneration site on Marrickville Golf Course for the past 7 years. The mud crab volunteers that work on that site every month have put in over 1,000 hours of work on the site over the past 7 years. And over that time, we've always had a very cooperative and productive relationship with the councils, with the ground staff and of course professional Kylie Moles. I'm pleased to report that our relationship with the management of the club has also been very positive over the past 12 months. It's been very, very much enjoyed. The Marrickville Golf Courses and Parklands is a prized natural asset on the banks of the Cooks River, and its use and enjoyment by non-golfers has increased significantly over the past years and continues to increase. The ecology of the golf course is also significant. The previous Council Biodiversity Officer, Damon Bassett, has identified 5 rare native plant species on the golf course lands. The golf course has tremendous ecological potential for improvement of the riparian zone, the bank naturalisation with native grass meadows, dense mini forests, and improved small bird habitat. The plans outlined in both option A and B of the plan of management are to be commended, and I think I hope that they get endorsed, and I'd hate to see that if this motion is passed that those plans that are in the council proposed plan of management don't come to fruition. The value of the golf course lands is something that is growing steadily. The number of community members using the golf course for recreation, exercise and walking continues to grow. And I've noticed that it's growing constantly. Golfers have become used to these people using the golf course. When I first started working there about 7 years ago, it was not unusual for golfers to be quite hostile. But I'm on the golf course nearly every day, and I haven't had a negative interaction with a golfer. Often very positive comments of support for the work that's done there by the volunteers. As I stated, the potential for this natural asset is great, and I think the forced reduction of the course holds out a very real prospect of being divisive and splitting the community. And it also threatens the viability of the golf course. And I'd hate to see that the cooperation that is developing be put under threat. I urge councillors to respect the motion, to reject the motion before them and allow the community component of the golf club to be nurtured and developed. The club management is already looking at a number of ways it can embrace the wider community and to increase their enjoyment and use of the parklands. It's a great opportunity to bring the community together to enhance the great urge to the council to reject the motion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Munro. And on behalf of the council, thank you very much for your dedication and activism to improving our local environment.
The Pride Centre expression of interest, and I'm also representing an organisation, Aboriginal community controlled organisation called Deadly Connections. Deadly Connections was established in 2018 in direct community response to the overrepresentation of Aboriginal people in both the justice and child protection systems. It's an Aboriginal community controlled specialist agency that operates across services and programs across the inner west and the inner city. We have a stronger presence in the inner west due to the fact that there's a number of Aboriginal families living in the inner west. We've been in negotiations with the Inner West Council since March of last year, I believe, so over a year, in regards to finding an appropriate space for our organisation. We've got significant community support, in fact, specific requests to be placed in the Inner West, to be place-based. We're very under-resourced. We don't have a huge amount of money for rent, so we're looking for a pro bono or low bono option. What my suggestion is in terms of the Pride Centre is that I'm formally requesting a co-location arrangement of LGBTIQ organisations, but also to serve as a community and cultural hub as well. Our theory of change is to develop stronger, safer, more connected communities. And the way that we do that is by providing services and programs to the Aboriginal community. There's a scarce amount of Aboriginal services, if any, in the Inner West community, specifically ones that target the population that we're targeting. In addition, we work with the whole community. In addition to the services and programs that we offer, we also want to create a space where community can come and learn about Aboriginal culture and then can share that with the wider community. So it wouldn't just be a space for clients and program participants, it'd be a space for the wider community. Our vision is to create a creative cultural hub that everybody can be involved in. As a resident of the Inner West, I grew up in Marrickville. I spent my childhood in Marrickville. Back then, I was one of very few Aboriginal families. Since then, the population of Aboriginal families has grown exponentially, and the services are not keeping up to date with that. We've got the support of the police. We've got the support of our Aboriginal Workers Circle. And so we're asking that the council considers space for us in the Pride Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Carly. Our next registered speaker for this item, is William Trewellyn. Have I pronounced that correctly, William?
I'll take that, Darcy, sure.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
All good. So thank you, everybody, and thanks for the council for allowing me to come and have a quick chat with you about my organisation and us endorsing this recommendation. My name is William Trullan. I'm a proud Nkumura Anawa man. I also identify as a queer man. I am the CEO of Black Aboriginal Corporation, which is a non-for-profit charity supporting LGBTQ First Nations community. We are a self-funded organisation that relies on our volunteers. And when I seen or heard the opportunity about coming to endorse a potential centre, I had to come and present my views. The Inner West and this council has a huge opportunity to create inclusion in what I would say is a very inclusive community, whether it be known to the members here and the guests. World Pride is coming to Australia in 2023, and this has a huge opportunity to influence what does inclusivity mean for not just our LGBT community, but like Carla had said, our Aboriginal and our Torres Strait Islander communities and members as well. The Inner West, I believe, is a very safe space for my community, not just the LGBT community, but also for Aboriginal communities. It is a social hub which we navigate, or we gravitate to. My chairperson of the organisation, John Leha, has been a member all of his life of the Inner West, has lived in Marrickville all of his life, and we are pushing to build and establish a base in the Inner West because it speaks to us as an organisation, it speaks to the work that we're trying to achieve, and it speaks to our values of an organisation. We are very well positioned to support the progression of this of the centre, having very formal MOUs with some key organisations within the LGBTQ space, such as ACON is one of our key partners, with Mardi Gras, who is also one of our key partners, but also big corporations like KPMG and huge legal firms who are also supporting us and helping us navigate our journey into inclusivity for our LGBTQ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members. There is no other organisation or no other safe space for mob. We have to connect in places like bars and pubs because we don't have a social setting or a space. As a non-for-profit charity that relies on volunteer basis, that we get no government funding, we hustle to make things work and we hustle to connect. We successfully just completed a 8-week program which we went out to community and delivered home essential packs to some of our most vulnerable community members. And on reflection of that work, we had no place to connect after that. We have some of the most vulnerable elders and some of our most vulnerable trans communities that have no safe space. So when I seen this opportunity and understood that where the town hall is and the role that Newtown particularly plays around creating safe spaces for our community, our LGBT community, it spoke to us and spoke to the need of actually creating this. So just on closing, the opportunity that the Inner West Council has to progress with this piece of work, particularly in the climate that we're facing with World Pride coming to Australia in 2023, the Inner West could be a leader in creating inclusivity for our LGBT communities, and Black Aboriginal Corporation wants to be a part of that journey.
Thank you very much for that, William. Our last registered speaker for this item is Scott Brunel of Alexandria. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Scott Brunel and I'm the chair and tonight representing Rainbow Families New South Wales. As a registered charity, Rainbow Families' mission is to connect, support, and empower LGBTIQ parents and their children and families. We were founded in the Inner West and are proudly based in this beautiful, accepting Great Council area where many of our community choose to live and raise their children. Rainbow Families are a growing population. We offer a range of social, educational, and support services. We run weekly playgroups, parenting groups, a children's resilience program, and social events, including a yearly Halloween disco that attracts over 500 children and parents. We currently rent council buildings to support these activities individually. Families and children really do feel welcome and safe in the Inner West. We employ a part-time worker who currently works from their kitchen table in Marrickville, as we don't have office space. We want to express our strong support for the Pride Center in Newtown. Newtown is a place our community loves, and we've actually used this space for playgroups and parenting groups in the past. We welcome the opportunity to be a tenant and ensure that the Pride Center is a place that welcomes babies, children, grandparents, and all in the LGBTIQ+ community. It would provide space for our services and worker as well as the support and network that a thriving center can offer a smaller organization such as Rainbow Families. We would also like to express our support for selecting a parent as part of the representative panel, and we would be happy to assist in recruiting a suitable parent. Thank you for your time and interest in creating a place that supports our growing community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Scott, we'll move on to item 5, for which there are 2 registered speakers. The first is Stephen Earp of Thornlea from DFP Planning. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Darcy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here assisting PLC as town planning consultant on the Alpha and Omega development that has been mentioned in the item 5 element raised in the council agenda. And I'm primarily here, we made ourselves available in case there are any questions that need to be identified outside of what's covered in the agenda. But just as a quick summary of where things are positioned, there's been quite a long process of back and forth with design and with discussions with council about Elizabeth Street. There's been some discussions from late last year as to how the Elizabeth Street portion of this proposal is handled. It's sort of culminated in tonight as a very low risk exercise for council. And I just wanted to frame what that really means. There's a state significant development application that has been prepared in accordance with the Department of Planning's requirements. And in order to lodge that development application, as most development applications require, owner's consent is part of that process. All of the SSDA process has been held off for that project until we've been able to hear from or resolve from council what that might be. What that's culminated in is a proposal. All council staff, traffic, infrastructure, engineering, and the like have all given in principle support for it. And that's culminated in a letter that is an in principle support letter to lodge the SSDA application. It does not offer support for that SSDA application. That will be a process that will be given to council's planning department as the referral process goes through. So what this letter is not a planning approval, and it's not an approval for the road closure. It's simply an in principle support element that allows PLC to submit the state significant development application to the department. There will still be lots of opportunities to have input either into the design or into this process. And as it's quite clearly set out in the agenda, the entire road closure process will have to happen after the development application has been approved. Approval of the state significant development application does not grant approval of any kind to the road closure, and there is no risk to council if the process doesn't go through at that later stage. There is no part of the planning process that warrants any work to go ahead until that land is actually acquired. So I just wanted to explain those things, and I'm happy to hang on to Zoom for a little bit in case there's any questions about how those processes might overlap. Thank you for hearing me speak.
Thank you very much for that. And our second speaker on this item, keep going on the blink, is Dr. Paul Burgess of Croydon, PLC Principal. Dr. Burgess, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me, Darcy?
Very clearly, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to say thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to address you tonight. PLC Sydney is, as you are aware, attempting to purchase the small cul-de-sac that sits at the end of Elizabeth Street. It allows parking for about 4 to 6 cars. It's surrounded by our facilities and playgrounds. We own part of the road already as our boundary passes through the cul-de-sac. I'm going to inform you about our educational vision now that you've heard from Stephen about the SSDA process. And I note, as Stephen said, we're partway through the process. All we would like tonight is your consent to continue this. There are other opportunities to consider other matters. So what is our vision? PLC Sydney is proud to be one of Australia's leading schools in science education for girls. At the Eureka Prizes in 2019, Australia's leading prize ceremony in the sciences, PLC Sydney was named as the leading senior school in the sciences and achieved second place as the leading junior school. For the past 3 years, we've achieved more awards than any other school at the prestigious Science Teacher Awards Night. Last year, we achieved 24 awards Just as a point of comparison, James Roos, which is an excellent school, of course, achieved 8. We recently received 3 medals in the Young Women in Science Awards. Last year, we were 15% above state average in physics and 10% in the other sciences. That's turned around from about 8 years ago when we were 5% below state average in physics. We are really moving for girls in science. It's really important that our nation helps girls and young women to achieve in the sciences. The road is being purchased so that we can build a 21st century educational facility in science. Now, let me say that science teaching has changed. The facilities now need more space for individual student research. And that's where our girls are really excelling. And that's why we're asking for your support. We need to modify and change the way that we do things. Please don't think that we just keep this for ourselves. Our students have led for the past 5 years in science forums where the students speak, and we invite students from other schools, Catholic, public, independent, to hear the leading sciences and to join in a collaborative process with other systems. Before you are our plans for the centre, I assure you that we are not going to use this, rent it out or anything like this. We only want it for educational purposes. You can lock us into this. I also note that the building, as with recent PLC Sydney developments, includes staff parking. The cul-de-sac is almost exclusively used by PLC Sydney staff now. If we purchase it, we'll increase the amount of parking on site and take more cars off the road. This will enable us to rectify the boundary issues with council. Over the past 3 years, we've added 53 car parking spaces to our site. The cul-de-sac currently offers 4 to 6 spots. We'll make it into an offering of 12 spots and so take 8 cars off the road. We're a school that plans well ahead, and I just wish to thank the councillor's manager of property for his professionalism in helping us to understand this process. We do not do this just for our own ends. We're a lighthouse school in the sciences. I ask you to support us, enabling to do this with the responsibility of helping us take cars off the streets and improve local parking. I too am happy to answer any questions. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you very much for your time. That brings us to item 7, Neighbourhood Centre Policy. And the first registered speaker for that is Gail Philpott of Dulwich Hill. Gail, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Thank you to the council for listening to my comments tonight. My name is Gail Philpott and I have been a resident of Summerhill and Dulwich Hill for 15 years and a long-time user of the Summerhill Community Centre. Last year, I became an ordinary committee member with an aim to improve services as I found the centre underutilised, unwelcoming and not serving the needs of the community. Based on my observations and experiences, I am against recommendation 3 that would grant Summerhill Community Centre Inc. more time to negotiate a lease for the following reasons, which all existed prior to COVID-19. The centre is inaccessible to residents. Access to the building, information about services, hiring, who committee members are or how to contact committee members is not public information that is made available on their website, nor is this information forthcoming when requested in writing or via phone. Face-to-face requests are difficult for residents as the centre is locked and rarely staffed. The organisation does not abide by its own aims, objectives and principles as set out in its constitution and website, which claims to promote strong membership of the Summerhill Community Centre so that it is representation of the local community. However, membership is tightly guarded and difficult to obtain. Many residents that applied for a membership throughout 2019 received rejection letters 6 months after their application with no explanation. Rejections for membership included existing members and many new applications were from highly skilled and respected people from the community. There are no positive stakeholder relationships between hirers and the committee or management. Many hirers I have spoken to have been made to feel unwelcome and have ceased hiring rooms within the centre because of poor treatment. Many other residents have avoided hiring rooms because the process is too difficult. It is of my understanding that the committee would rather use fines against not-for-profit community groups for trivial issues instead of working together to find solutions. Complaints made to management and the committee about such treatment are often deemed vexatious and ignored. Through my observation as a committee member and frequent user, I rarely saw the rooms fully occupied. At no time was I or any other member asked to volunteer our time or skills to any project. I was never witness to the application for grants, planning, advertising, or delivery of community programs that the centre was funded by the council to provide. Community surveys and financial acquittals for the council donation is not transparent or available for public inspection. Services that are offered at the centre are provided by outside organisations who simply hire a space within the centre. The community centre, in my estimations, operates as a hall for hire and not a centre that offers services that staff facilitate. I am against Summerhill Community Centre Inc receiving any donation from the council or occupying council premises. They have lost the respect of the community and have denied the people of Summerhill a thriving, welcoming community centre that they deserve. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gail. Just in a slightly unusual approach, could I just ask what the reasons stated for the refusal of membership were for yourself and others, just given that that seems such an unusual thing?
Some people were given no reason. When I made further inquiries, I was told that it wouldn't be in the best interest of the centre to increase membership.
Right.
And I was already a member at the time, so mine was just a renewal.
Right. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Our next registered speaker for the item is David Rollinson of Summerhill. David, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Very clearly.
Very clear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been a resident of the Inner West for 50 years and 17 of those years in Summerhill. I've had a 20-year career in local government, and that's included time as a Director of Community Services, where part of my role was that council's nominee on management committees for community centres. Now I'm semi-retired. In August of last year, I began volunteering in the Dementia Social Support Program for the Inner West residents that was run by the not-for-profit Three Bridges community at the Summerhill Community Centre. I noticed that there was only ever one other user, and that person was there for 1 hour during the 18 hours over the 3 days that we were there. Checking the centre's What's On weekly calendar showed that there was, in fact, very little happening at the centre, and what was happening was mainly private individuals running classes and activities and charging attendance fees. There were no programs actually offered by the centre itself. This is despite the $43,000 annual council subsidy. This is totally at odds with my understanding and experience of community centres. What is being conducted at that centre is in fact a room hire business. Most of the material on the centre's website is also very much out of date and or incorrect. The list of, quote, current programs that we run, end quote, is a work of fiction. There are no annual reports uploaded. The last newsletter was in November 2010. The centre's front door is usually closed, as is the centre's office. For much of the week, the centre does not function. And I noticed all these things prior to the COVID close down. In late 2019, Three Bridges communication with the centre manager deteriorated, and it ceased by early this year. Efforts to resolve matters, which included seeking a meeting with the association's president, were all rebuffed. The CEO of Three Bridges and myself, at her request, then met with council staff who stated that they had received, quote, hundreds of complaints about the centre over the years, but with continuing pushback on concluding terms for a lease, they felt unable to assist. Three Bridges then concluded that it was unsafe for their program to continue at the centre, and they began looking elsewhere. The COVID shutdown beat them to it. I'm told that Three Bridges is not prepared to return to the centre under the current management. This is despite the actual facility and its park setting there at Darrajux Gardens being absolutely ideal for the dementia program. It is worth mentioning that Three Bridges was paying $30,000 per annum room hire fees to the centre. If the centre had been council operated, they would have qualified for nil fees. In conclusion, I have no confidence in the current association and centre manager's ability to develop with the community input and then provide program appropriate services. Even if the association finally agreed to terms of a lease and a service level agreement.
David, I'll just ask you to conclude your remarks as your time is.
Could we perhaps have a 30-second extension, Darcy, just to hear him wrap up? I think this is really important.
Councillor Hesse is moving an extension of time.
Seconded.
I don't think I'm going to need it.
No, sorry,
yeah.
sorry, David. I'm going to go to Councillor Hesse, who's moved an extension of time. We'll say 1 minute. Rather. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes, Councillor Steer will second that.
Councillor Steer will second that. All those in favour? All those against? I presume that's carried unanimously. David, over to you. You have an extension of time of 1 minute.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mayor. As I was saying, I have no confidence in the ability of the association and the centre manager to develop with the community a program of appropriate services. Even if the association finally agreed to terms of a lease and a service level agreement, this has been under negotiation now for many years. I believe that such an arrangement would prove to be cursory only. Council staff would then have the impossible task of monitoring and trying to ensure compliance. And the community, unfortunately, would continue to be the loser. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that. Our last speaker on this item is Colin Jones of Summer Hill. Colin, are you there? No.
Oh, you're on mute.
No, I've just lost my mouse. Had to unmute. Look, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name's Colin Jones. I live in Summerhill. I've been a long-term resident in Summerhill, probably over 40 years now. A number of years ago, I was awarded the rank and title of Asheville Citizen of the Year for my contribution to the community. So I guess I've been involved for a long time. 30 years we've had involvement with the Summerhill Community Centre in one way or another, and it's precursor the Lethington Community Centre. And of those 30 years, probably about 10 years on the committee as the treasurer and as the president. So I've certainly had a long-term association with the organisation. Since that time, I've been a member or president of community organisations using the Summerhill Community Centre, and so I know its value to the users and to the community. It came as a shock to me to actually read the paper that was presented under item 7, 14 major infractions, which were never addressed by the letter from, what's his name, the lawyer, Mr. Stricker. And I really can't go to those, and I think the speakers before me, in fact, covered that quite well. What concerns me, though, is that my attempts to rejoin not the committee, just rejoin the association by paying my dollar, came to naught. I was rejected out of hand. No reason was given, and the only excuse that I got was some rubbish about, oh, COVID was impacting something. You either want people on your organisation or you don't. Obviously, they don't want me, and basically, from what Gail has said, they don't want anybody, and I think that's totally unreasonable. It's a community centre. It should involve the community, and I think the committee, in fact, should be meeting with the community and, in fact, resolving these situations. I think under these circumstances, there's no point negotiating a new lease. I think basically council should go out there, seek resolution of all these issues, and in fact seek expressions of interest of other people. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm coming at. I think, you know, look, we're going to go nowhere with this committee. It just obviously doesn't want to talk to the people. It doesn't want to talk to council. And I think the sooner they're shown the door, I think the happier everyone will be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Colin. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item 13, notice of motion, uranium mining ban in New South Wales must stay. The first registered speaker is Mr. Nick Dean of Marrickville. Nick, great to see you again. How are you?
Oh. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, yeah. Look, I'd just like to say that nuclear power is now a discredited system. There are all sorts of problems associated with it. We had the disaster at Chernobyl in 1986, 25 years later, which of course is only a blip of time in terms of nuclear materials. 25 years later, we had the disaster at Fukushima. And really, nobody has tackled the idea of decommissioning nuclear power stations. So I believe that nuclear power is a discredited system. Therefore, the mining of uranium becomes unnecessary and actually counterproductive. The other thing I want to mention is that there are very clear links between the extraction of uranium or the use of uranium as a nuclear fuel and the nuclear weapons industry. And in case nobody's noticed, it looks very likely that within about a year, the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons will come into force, because more than, I think, 44 countries have now ratified the treaty. And that means that only 6 more countries need to do so, and it will come into force. And only very recently, many countries that are, even countries that consider themselves protected under the United States so-called nuclear umbrella, many of those countries have indicated their support for the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons. So my feeling is, really, why are we going over all this old ground again? There's really nothing new in what I've said, except the developments with regard to the treaty. But the arguments against nuclear power were well versed in the 1980s. The community then decided that it was unacceptable to continue mining uranium, and that's where we should go again. So I think the reasons haven't changed, and the decision that was made in the 1980s should stand. So I support the motion.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Next speaker on this item is Pip Hinman of Newtown. Pip, are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you very well. Please proceed.
Oh, great. Look, I mean, I just want to acknowledge I'm speaking from the land of the Gadigal Wangal people of the Eora Nation, land that was never ceded. I've been a resident in Newtown for the past 25 years. I'm speaking in support of the motion, and I'm also speaking, I want to mention my friend Bruce Threlfo was to speak but couldn't stay on the line, and he's fully endorsing the approach of the motion, and we've collaborated on some of these comments. I think lifting the 33-year-old ban on uranium mining is not only a regressive step, even though it doesn't seem to be much agreement that uranium would be used in Australia. The nuclear facility at Lucas Heights producing medical radioisotopes doesn't require it. You may say that given there are also no known economic deposits of uranium in New South Wales, and so lifting the ban wouldn't amount to much, but it would definitely be a step in the wrong direction. Politically, I think it would be a win for the ideologues who are using the uranium argument right now as really as cover for maintaining the current settings on fossil fuel energy. And that comes especially from the Minerals Council of New South Wales and Australia, and certainly the New South Wales Nationals, and a section only of the New South Wales Liberals wants this mining ban lifted. Of course, nuclear energy proponents argue that as a source of energy, it's cleaner than fossil fuels, but they're also supporting fossil fuel energy, so even in a climate emergency, so really trying to have it both ways. I think council has an opportunity to lead on these sort of issues that go well beyond local government boundaries. In fact, Inner West Council could continue on from the proud legacy of the former Marrickville, Leichhardt and Ashfield councils that took a very strong stand against uranium mining, nuclear power and nuclear weaponry. They were, of course, influenced by the mass movements that developed in the 70s and those massive Palm Sunday anti-nuclear marches during the 80s, of which Bruce Threlfo was an integral part. The signs erected by those former councils were an expression of that sentiment. They showed that the council was listening and prepared to take a stand on an important social, economic and justice issue. And that is why erecting more signs in the LGA is an important part of building that public pressure against the move to lift the ban on uranium mining. So I think adding that action component to this particular motion would show that council is prepared to take on a more progressive educational role, which is aimed well beyond just local residents. So I'd urge council to support the additional clause to erect more nuclear-free zone signs throughout the LGA and to pass this motion. Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Pip. The last registered speaker on this item was Bruce Threlfo. I've known Bruce for many years and I've always had difficulty pronouncing his name. So that brings us to the end of the contributions from the public gallery. So with that, we'll move on to the items on the agenda. The deputy mayoral election has been conducted. The second item on the agenda is Marrickville Parklands and Golf Course Plan of Management.
Councillor Byrne, I'd like to speak on this matter.
May I move an alternate motion?
Sorry.
I'd like to suggest that I would like to move the notice of the motion and that...
I'll just call the meeting to order. Sorry, Councillor Hesse. I had Councillor Drury had the call.
I bet you did.
Who I'll go to, and I'm very happy to come to you subsequently. Councillor Drury.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have distributed an alternate motion to councillors, and that is before us, I believe, Catherine. Yes, thank you. And I'd like you to consider that. I'd like you to consider that because I don't think that the Latin expression ex damo ultras utilitatis is correct. I don't think that one person's loss is another person's gain. I think that the key issue for those parklands is having a more sustainable and environmental future with greater community participation and opportunities. I am very pleased that the plan of management that has been put before us addresses the very difficult issue of the Dibble waterhole. The Dibble waterhole that we are spending 1.7 million fixing up is not a source of water that can continue to be used by the golf course. You'll note that I have suggested that council needs to continue to work with the club on grant opportunities to look at the feasibility of other environmentally sustainable water supply for that area. I think that that's an important thing that has been addressed. What has also been addressed is the interaction with the riparian zone and the river. You'll know that I have a great passion for that river. I have a great passion for water sensitive urban design and cleaning up our waterways. I think that the initiatives in this are a splendid step towards having a far greater environmental sensitive area there, an area that we can all enjoy. For me, they were the key issues that needed to be addressed in this plan of management, and I'm pleased to see they are addressed. I do not accept that they need to be addressed at the expense of 9 holes.
Councillor Drew,
all councillors consider my motion.
Okay, I was about to move an extension of time because it was clear that you hadn't concluded your remarks. Are you open to me doing so?
I'll pick up in right of reply, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, no problem with that. Is there a seconder for the Drury motion?
Chair.
No seconder. I'm happy to second it.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak just on a couple of issues. First of all, I think focusing on the club as a golf club and the golf course and people playing golf is only a small part of the picture. The most important thing is there's a community club that's existed there for 80 years, and any changing of that golf course down to 9 holes will mean the loss of that club. And the rate we have community clubs falling over, it'll be the death of all community clubs in the area because there are hardly any left. The people down there are doing a tremendous job. I've been down there, I've witnessed the actual golf course in operation. I've seen dog walkers in there. I've seen walkers in there. I've seen people just lying down near the riverbank, just enjoying the river. Everyone in harmony. I haven't seen anyone hit by a golf ball, and I've never had anyone come up to me and complain about being hit by a golf ball. I can sincerely say that in my 16 years as a councillor. As a young person, I ran through the golf course, training at Marnie Park and playing. There's no issue. What I want to bring forward is that council also, in principle, give support for a 21-year lease for the golf club and the lands, because I want to see them get to their 100 years and be a proud community club that actually services all the needs of the community. It's so important. And there's a lot of issues there to talk about. Another amendment that I'll move is in our search for green space. Sometimes we look, but we don't actually see. We're blinded. What we actually really need to grab some more really cheap green space is just across the river at Gough-Whitlam Park. The river, Gough-Whitlam Park, is a large public space on the southern side of the Cooks River, opposite South Marrickville. Building a pedestrian bridge across the river below Warren Park will deliver easy direct access to pedestrians to Gough-Whitlam Park for thousands of South Marrickville residents. Currently, pedestrian bridges are spaced approximately every 400 metres along Cooks River. This is not the case between Illawarra Road and Tempe Station. The proposed pedestrian bridge would bring part of the river into alignment, spacing through the Cooks River, and it will unlock that for thousands of Marrickville residents and the Canterbury residents coming across. We already have the water play park, they come across, they use the golf. When we're looking at this single-mindedly, and the river is a corridor and it is one, really, and we should be treating it like one and getting the best out of it. It is so important. That's really the big game in town, to unlock extra space. The water hole is needed by the golf course. Not that they're bleeding the water out of there, it's the reservoir, because the pipes that are down in South Marrickville there do not support the pressure needed to actually water the actual green. And what we need to do is sustainably manage that, so we have a level where water can be taken out. No bank destabilisation can be considered. We have to have a safe water level, and that manages it. The threat is if the bank destabilises, the units above are put in threat, correct? But if
Councillor, I'll move an extension of time of 1 minute. Is there a seconder for that? No, we're going to cut Macri off, are we?
I'm happy to.
No, I said yes.
second it.
Right, seconded by Councillor Hesse. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Councillor Macri, you have an additional minute.
what needs to happen at the waterhole, it's an empty brick pit filled with water, and it's developed into an ecological treasure. It needs to be managed, because when there's too much water in the waterhole and we get a rain event, what happens is the units below the waterhole are flooded. So what really needs to happen is for council to work with the club to develop some stormwater harvesting ideas to assist the club with their problems. When that is rectified, it'll fix a flooding problem in the area in Riverside Crescent and help the club. In the meantime, there needs to be a sustainable use of the resource that's there. That's all I'm asking for, and I'll move amendments and they'll come up. I believe Ian's got the amendments there. There was actually a map actually showing. I don't know, Ian, if you can put that up. That would be great.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Macri.
Councillor Byrne.
Councillor Macri, your amendments have been tabled and are on the screen now, I believe. Councillor Hesse.
Yes, Councillor Byrne. I'd like to ask a couple of questions before I.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak next?
Councillor Hesse has the floor. Please proceed, Councillor.
Through you, Councillor Byrne, if I can ask one of the officers present, what's the annual rent that Marrickville Golf Club pays for the use of the course?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, councillors.
I can hear you now. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The annual rent at this for the current financial year is in the order of $6,000 per annum.
I'll have to go down here. Do we give any direct, well, I guess, do we give any other forms of direct, through you, Chair, does council give any other forms of direct or indirect subsidies to the Marrickville Golf Club?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, only insofar as the club has permission through its existing licence to draw water from the Dibble Avenue waterhole. That in itself would, in my view, represent a subsidy. And also council at this point has the obligation for
Sorry, I missed you that last bit there, Elizabeth. Can you just...
Council has the obligation for the maintenance of trees on the site.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak next?
Chair, I'd like to move the, I'd like to move as a foreshadowed motion the officer's recommendation at item 2, and I'll speak to that if I may.
Please do.
Thank you. Tonight we're asked to support for public comment the proposal by staff to rework the Marrickville Golf Course in line with Council's recreational needs study, which indicated the growing need for unstructured play and recreational space. The recreational needs survey advised that most of us gain exercise in an unstructured way, through walking for pleasure or health, to walk the dog, to walk to public transport or the shop. Others enjoy our limited public spaces by jogging, cycling, or using our wonderful public pools. And it's only when we get to soccer football do we find an organised sport on the list. As councillors were asked to engage with this survey of our community and support the use of our very limited public land, the second least per head in New South Wales, in ways that maximise participation and exercise for the betterment of our whole community. Since the foundation of Marrickville Golf Club 80 years ago, as a 9-hole golf course, our world has changed immeasurably. In particular, the way we work and who works has changed almost beyond recognition over the last 40 years. Women are a much larger portion of the workforce and yet still carry out the vast majority of domestic labour. Working life is now often spread over 7 days a week, whereas up to the mid-80s, few worked outside 7 to 3, 8 to 4, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, with shops closed at midday Saturday. After work, men played sport. Despite our declining participation in sports clubs, the structure of our clubs often remain unreflective of broader social changes. For example, the 9-member board of the golf club has but one woman. Marrickville Red Devils board has the same numbers. I wish to pause here though and pay my respects to those who do volunteer for these committees. Without you, organised sport wouldn't happen, and your work for the community, for our community, is invaluable, and I thank you very, very heartily. I know through new golf club president Andrew Tye that he's trying to bring the club forward, but to some degree the boards of our volunteer sports bodies are reflective of that broader issue that women and girls still participate in organised sport in much lower numbers than men and boys. However, I do wish Andrew and the club well. This then is not to criticise organised sport, which I personally love, but to state simply that our council should allocate the limited resources our community has toward where they'll be best used and where we engage as many of us as possible in exercise and community connection. One can hardly discuss this issue, though, I regret, without coming to politics. Since the infamous days of Ros Kelly and her whiteboard during the Hawke Labor government, right through to Bridget McKenzie and PM Morrison, parties in government have recognised that sports organisations are a wonderful method of getting their party's name in front of a lot of people. There's often precious little analysis if those grants meet broader community needs, though. Locally, the campaign to save Marrickville Golf Course has been straight out dishonest. Claims that the golf course were to be sold were always a lie, and those who associate themselves with that claim do themselves and their cause a disservice. I expect golf club members to express support for 18 holes, along with those scared by that dishonest campaign.
Extension of time of 1 minute for Councillor Hesse. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes.
Councillor Stamlis will second that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Councillor Hesse?
Thank you, Chair. I expect the golf club members to express support for 18 holes, along with those scared by that dishonest campaign. That's the power of membership-based organisations, and I only wish more people would understand that power and join a union. As councillors, however, we're tasked to represent the whole community: walkers, runners, dog walkers, swimmers, cyclists, golfers, footy players, those who just want a nice place to sit, men and women. Councillors, I ask you to support sending the staff proposal to the community for feedback. Respectfully, we know what the golf club's members think. Let's hear from everybody else. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
Thanks very much, Councillor Hesse. No, I'm just going to check first whether there's a seconder for the Hesse foreshadowed motion, unless you're that seconder, Councillor. Councillor De Cruz has her hand up. Councillor De Cruz is the seconder for that motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, look, just briefly, I've been a golfer for 20 years prior to joining the Inner West Council. I think that is an unfair thing. I was actually surprised that the Marrickville Golf Course is actually only a par 60 currently. There are 9-hole golf courses, most notably Lake Hope, where I was a member for 20 years, which is a par 64, and Camaray, which is a par 66. I note from the proposal that there's no par 5 proposed in the 9-hole course, but I think that there's potential to actually improve the course quite significantly in the revamp. And so I support looking at converting it to a 9-hole course, also providing many other recreation activities in that vicinity for walking and for riverside activities. So I'm happy to second the foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And now I've got Councillor Passos.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I don't think, in fact, we can hear Councillor Passos.
Yeah, Councillor Passos, we could hear you, but I can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, can I have some advice on whether Councillor Hesse has a conflict on this and should refrain from even speaking on this or voting on it? Because I'm led to believe it's his partner that has moved, that has started this.
Councillor Passos, I'll call you to order. Councillor Passos, I'll ask you to desist from your.
Well, could I have Councillor Hesse declared an interest?
No, sorry, Councillor Passos, it's open to you to move a point of order.
Well, I do move a point of order because I'd like to know if Councillor Hesse should have declared an interest.
Councillor Passos, I'll call you to order. As you're very well aware, as being such an experienced councillor, it is totally the remit of each individual councillor as to whether they declare a conflict of interest or not. And the political activity of one's partner is in no way a conflict of interest in councillors taking a position on a public policy issue. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to know what councillors would think if we decided tomorrow a report was put in front of us that we have a soccer field or a football field, or we fill in most of our pools. And the gender issue coming up, I cannot see when we deal with clubs or other organisations, I don't think we ask the leagues, clubs or any other club in the area, how many female members do you have? This is clutching at straws. And as for people saying they're being hit by golf balls, I don't like dogs. Parcel of living in the inner west and a built-up area. It's not a reason to go after the golf club and fall into pieces. We didn't even put a hydrotherapy pool in the new complex. We've got the people, seniors, that go to play golf and we're trying to take that away from them. I think not. This should not even be on the agenda. In fact, a report should be put in front of us that what can we do to support the club. I cannot believe that we are spending time to go after a place that's delivering for the people, plenty of places to walk. Oh, let's take out the cycleways. There's too many cyclists. They're quite dangerous too on the footpath. They're more dangerous than a golf ball in such an open, passive space. I really cannot believe the things that I've heard here tonight. I've been in the inner west all my life. If you want a rainforest, Australia is a large country. If we cannot learn to live and let live, move out to the Nullarbor Plains or the Hay Plains, plenty of space.
Thank you for that,
Councillor
Councillor.
Byrne, can I move in
Thank you for that, Councillor Passos. Sorry, who was that grabbing my attention?
Councillor Lockie.
Councillor Lockie.
Stamlis after.
Yes, Councillor Stamlis. Lockie, then Stamlis.
Excellent. Look, I'd like to move an amendment, but before I do so, can I ask the council officers to just respond to, we had some commentary from one of our speakers, I think it was Edward, although I've had the question raised with me in other forums as well, just about that commentary about how all the empty open spaces and sporting grounds and so forth we have in the local area, and why aren't we looking at Canterbury Bankstown Council? My understanding is that our recreational needs study would have looked at that holistically and not just stopped at the borders, but if I can get some clarity on that, that would be great.
But what's the question, Councillor?
The question is, does our recreational needs study take into account how the existing fields in our LGA and the border LGA fields are used?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely. In the establishment of the recreation needs study in 2018, significant benchmarking exercise was undertaken not only of recreation facilities and parks within our own LGA, but also benchmarked against neighbouring LGAs, where it was identified that certainly the inner west, accounting for all of that, remained critically undersupplied for open space.
Thank you. Look, yes, I'd like to, who's echoing me? Anyway, look, I'd like to thank everybody who's been in contact with me and all of the councillors I know to provide feedback on the proposals. It's really appreciated. I am inclined to support the officer's recommendation because I think going with the 18 holes is a missed opportunity for us to address some of those needs that the officer highlighted, and also to balance the different community and environmental needs here much more effectively. However, I do hear the concerns that have been raised to us very strongly about the future of the club, were the course to reduce to 9 holes. So the amendment I'm tabling is for the foreshadowed motion, if the officers can bring that up on screen, which would allow us to both open up more of the parkland and provide an option to retain an 18-hole course. And if you look at point A there, it's essentially that we update the plan and management and master plan to incorporate the option to design the 9-hole course as a reversible course, which offers variety and the option for participants to play a full 18-hole course. And for those who are unfamiliar with the concept, what a reversible golf course does, it gives you the option to play the same layout in 2 different directions by using multiple tee-off points, different cups and flags on the same green, and so on. It's not the same thing as playing the same 9 holes twice, because depending on which direction you're traveling in, you get a completely different course to play. This wouldn't normally be considered at this stage of the planning process. It's a design aspect, but I wanted to raise it tonight because of all the feedback we've had around retaining an 18-hole course to show that it's not mutually exclusive with also opening up the space. And of course, we only have the opportunity to do this with the 9-hole course as the plan of management and the master plan specifically includes a commitment to engaging a professional golf course designer to redesign that course anyway. Reversible courses are not a new thing. They date right back to the old course at St Andrews in Scotland, the home of golf. More recently, they've started popping up again, particularly in the US, as a way of providing challenging courses in smaller footprints. We're not the only ones with that problem, as well as offering a pretty incredible point of difference for Marrickville, which would have the flexibility to offer 2 different 9-hole courses or an 18-hole course or both. The added advantage for the club is that this drastically reduces their maintenance costs. And that's going to be important because, as we heard earlier, the golf club hasn't been paying for irrigation or tree maintenance up to this point, and they're going to have to find the budget for that within the next year. And those costs are going to be much higher over a 21-hectare footprint than they will over a 9-hole footprint. The club will also clearly need to diversify their revenue base because that statistic Mr. Tai quoted earlier about relying 80% of their fees on 80% of their profit coming from green fees does leave them very vulnerable. And opening up that space, as noted in the plan of management, alongside a truly unique course, would help position them really well for the future. I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Lockie, just before I go to Councillor Stamoulis, can I just ask, as a layperson, not a golf pro, how does it work in terms of the reversible course? I'm familiar with the reversible jumper, but the reversible course, so when you're walking back, when you're playing the hole back the other way, don't the golfers who are playing the hole coming in the original direction, aren't they hitting golf balls at you and you're hitting golf balls at them?
Look, I would have thought so, but it can be done, apparently. There are configurations around the world that allow that to happen. And it was something that I sought council officers' advice on because it's one thing for me to look at this on a desktop. It's another thing to actually know, can this in practical reality be done at this particular site? And I've been assured that yes, it can actually be, it is actually a viable option for here. Look, I don't know. I'm one of those people who are in fear of golf balls flying around, even if I'm not playing in opposite directions. So I'm possibly not the correct person to answer that one.
Yeah, well, golf balls and fence sitting, you can injure yourself either way. I'll just put a question to the officers in regards to reversible golf courses, which are not articulated in the report, but we're informed by Councillor Lockie can be achieved. What assessment has been undertaken about a reversible course, and has there been any community consultation on this innovative proposal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no detailed assessment has been undertaken of it, other than Councillor Lockie raised that suggestion with staff today. My very experienced Parks and Recreation planning team have outlined to me that such courses do exist, are well established worldwide, and if it's something that council wanted to pursue, it's a concept that we could quite readily make available at the Marrickville site.
Right, so there's been an assessment undertaken that you could turn Marrickville Golf Course into a reversible golf course? There's enough space there?
Only in a very limited assessment, Councillor.
Right, okay, thank you for that. Councillor Stamoulis.
Chair, before you move forward, I just need some clarification. My understanding is the actual golf course does maintain all the trees on the golf course, not the council. So can we get that actually clarified 100%? Because I've got a lot of angry golfers that have just actually texted me.
Okay, I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm advised that responsibility lies with the council under the terms of the lease.
And council has not done that. Golf course has maintained all the trees on the golf course.
Point of order, Mayor. We've had an answer to the question.
Yep, no, thank you for that, Councillor Kiad. I'm on that. Councillor Stamoulis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I view golf courses as beautiful green environments. I like public access through them. They have fantastic biodiversity, but other than that, I don't have a great general interest in golf. but the rest of Australia does. The data that I've seen for people 15 and over, age 15 and over, shows that golf is one of the core sports in Australia. It sits there, depending on the survey that you look at either 5th, anywhere between 5th and 10th as a core sport for Australian people 15 and over. And that matters a lot to me, because it shows me that there is great interest in that sport. And additionally, I've seen some changes in lifestyle that have occurred throughout COVID. I think people are turning to recreations and sport in a big way. And therefore, the opportunities, given the change of management at the club, to seize on this change, I think is very strong. And I'd be very interested to see whether the new management can, as I say, seize that opportunity and work with that. So in terms of the data that I see, I would have to support the continuation of an 18-hole course at this present time. And also, given the change of management, I'd like to see where they can take that in the future. I do have a concern about public safety, and for that reason, I'm putting up an amendment, which I hope the officer will be able to put on screen, that I believe that council needs to conduct a safety audit of the public walking paths through the golf course to determine if safety treatments are needed. I don't have a funding source for that. I just need to do that audit first, and we can consider that public safety is provided for. There may be nothing needed, but given that it's been raised, I'd like to ensure that that the walkers through the course have all opportunities to be safe when they walk through that site. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Stamos. I don't believe you need a funding source in order to specify that an action be taken as part of a master plan. There's lots of things in the master plan that are actions that aren't necessarily funded. So there's no problem with you moving that as an amendment to either the primary motion or the foreshadowed motion. Which one are you seeking to move it to?
I'm happy to move it to either who would accept that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll suggest that that's being moved as an amendment to both.
I'm happy to accept it to mine, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Further discussion, councillors?
Yes, this is Councillor Steer.
Yes, Councillor Steer.
Yes, I would like to support the foreshadowed motion, and these are my reasons. The club has been there for 80 years, but it pays a peppercorn rent to the council, and yet has difficulty maintaining the 21 hectares for the playing of golf, let alone for any other purpose. I walked it on the weekend, and it's obviously not particularly well kept, although the greens were actually quite overgrown. There are some safety measures with fences and things put up around the course, but there was very little use of the course. It was a sunny afternoon, but it had been raining, and there were about 10 people playing golf. There were more people at HJ Marnie Memorial Park, which is directly adjacent to the golf course abutting Illawarra Road, walking their dogs. Park has been very well renovated by council. It has picnic grounds, a skate park, and a new garden put in. And it's quite the contrast to the rather wild and woolly golf course. I have played golf there. I played there with my children some years ago, and there was nowhere that I could take my children for a drink or for recreation after we had played the game. All we could do was get back in the car and go home. It has been a very unfriendly place for a very long time, and while I'm told that things are changing, they're clearly only changing because council has decided to take action in this way. As for saying that Canterbury Bankstown grounds are open to us all, That's all very well and good, but our council, Inner West Council, does not control Canterbury Bankstown Council and does not control those grounds. I will point out that Canterbury Bankstown Council has been very active in providing excellent recreation grounds for walking, barbecues and playing fields on their side, and currently are rebuilding Lang Road Bridge with a all accessible kayak launch pad. So that near Buruwan Park, which is right at the end of our golf course, and that's quite an exciting development. I think we can do a lot more, and I think the plan is fair to all. It meets the needs of the golf course. If they're really having so much trouble maintaining the golf course and keeping up their numbers and so on, they'll find it easier with a 9-hole course, particularly at the peppercorn rent that they will no doubt continue to pay council, and the very high membership fees to vote at Marrickville Golf Club. You have to pay $775 membership. There are smaller memberships, but they do not include voting rights, which allows a certain group to keep control. We need green spaces, we need recreation, and we need to rethink what is fair for everyone, not just a group of golfers. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Steer. Further discussion, councillors?
Councillor Byrne, I know I've spoken on this already, but I have a response to your query about how do you avoid the flying golf balls.
Oh, please proceed.
Yes, so my husband, who used to play golf every weekend and has a whole box full of trophies gathering dust somewhere to prove it, has assured me that it's not a normal practice to have multiple people playing the same hole at different parts of the green or in different fairways, and it's part of golf etiquette and situational awareness that you always look for wherever anybody else is on a green and signal to each other if you're ready to tee off. So I suspect that's perhaps exposed both of us as not being champion golfers, but that apparently this is a thing.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Can we get on with the meeting?
Yeah, no, we
having golf lessons.
Clarification from Councillor Lockyer, just involves halving the number of people on the course. Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, further discussion. Is there anyone who would like to propose an amendment to either the primary motion or the foreshadowed motion?
Councillor Byrne, I'd like to speak briefly in support of the foreshadowed motion. And I want to respond to a couple of points that have been made. I think this is a hugely important issue for our council. One of the first really big pieces of research that we received when we came onto council was the recreation needs study. And contrary to what Councillor Drury said, it actually did indicate that we would have to make some tough choices and that there would be winners and losers, whether that be in the form of taking funds from one area and allocating it to another, or indeed in this case, taking an existing usage and changing it to another. There are some of the tough decisions that we would need to make in order to serve the needs of the community now. And what are the needs of the community now? Golf is part of that, definitely. And I think that the staff have reached a very fair and reasonable compromise based on the research, which is that golf will play a part in our LGA, but that not all of the land that it's currently allocated should continue in the way that it is. But the reality is that golf is not one of the most 10 popular sports, particularly for women. It's way down at 2% participation rate. Walking for men and for women, particularly for older men and older women, is at the top. That's why the Cooks River is so important, and that's why this opportunity is so important. And I think that we need to really recognize that when we talk about the participation of older people in recreation, we are talking about walking. For most people, we're talking about walking. There are those who play golf and they'll still be able to do so under the 9-hole proposal. But really, if we want to get our community to where it wants to be, that's what the recreation needs study sets out for us, where the community wants to be. We're not going to get there if we don't make these decisions. The alternative is that we spend a huge amount of funds trying to buy this green space to reach that gap that we have. Now, previously, Councillor Macri has suggested that we take those out of VPAs, so that instead of providing public works or affordable housing, that we instead use VPA funds to buy green space. That's also a decision that can be made, but again, we're making a tough choice and taking from one area and giving to another. I think that the staff have here, based on an immense amount of research and study, come up with a really fair and reasonable proposal that will take us toward the goal that the recreation needs study demands that we meet. And unfortunately, I'm fearing that we're not going to be up to the challenge tonight. And I hope that the campaign will continue, because in the future, this problem only gets more dire in terms of the gap that council is really leaving our community with.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Kiat. I might speak very briefly on the matter. I've just received a message from a woman I know who lives in Leichhardt, who's an emergency services worker, who has sent me a message to say, my partner plays twice a week in the ladies' competition, and the friendship and camaraderie thriving there is fantastic. There are ladies in their 90s, ladies in their 20s, and everything in between playing sport together. Tell me what other sport has this level of female participation at all stages of life. And I think it is important to recognise that Marrickville Golf Course is very different to some of the elite institutions across Sydney and Australia. It's no Moore Park. It's no Royal Sydney. In fact, it's the most accessible and affordable golf course in Sydney. We all know that, especially during COVID, as has been referenced, there have been tens of thousands of people flocking down to the course as pedestrians, dog walkers, as picnickers, biodiversity activists and environmental volunteers, sharing the course with golfers as they have done for many, many years. One important component of this consideration is that we have to recognise, in a community such as ours that has been very gentrified, and one such as Marrickville, which has become much less ethnically diverse, that the older working class people who helped build Marrickville into the place that we know and love, and I believe it's one of the best suburbs in Sydney, we need to respect their community assets, the things that they have built through their blood, sweat and tears.
Here, Mr. Mayor, here.
And there hasn't been that really hasn't been a component of this debate, but as someone from a political background and a social background that's always, I've always been taught the importance of working class institutions. I do want to say that tonight during my comments. I would like to see every other golf course in Sydney adopting the practices of Marrickville Golf Course. If we could get Moore Park allowing pedestrians and dog walkers onto their elite course in the same that has been achieved in Marrickville through community cooperation, then we could really open up huge swathes of land that could be better used by the community at golf courses across the city. So to put it another way, I think it would be a tragedy to have the most democratised golf course in Sydney be the one that gets cut in half while the others remain untouched. I agree with Councillor Kiat that it's a good thing to have political activism on all sides around such an important community asset such as this. And the process that has occurred here has been a good one. There's been frank and fearless advice provided by the council officers through a detailed report. The councillors, as the elected representatives of the community, have read the report, got the advice, gone away and consulted with the community and with institutions like Marrickville Golf Course to get advice. And if a decision is made tonight whatever decision is made tonight, I just hope that democratic process will be upheld and respected, because that will mean that a decision of the council has been made through a good and democratic process. I will be voting to keep the course at 18 holes. Further discussion, councillors?
Chair, can I just say something? Councillor Kiat said that golf was not in the top.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order. I believe Councillor Macri has had his say. I think we could all indulge in rebuttal, but I think it would be better.
It's not a rebuttal, Chair. It's misrepresenting the facts. So it is a point of order, possibly, but I was trying to be kinder to Councillor Kiat.
Well, Councillor Macri, I'll ask you to address the point.
The point is that golf does sit in the top 10 physical activities in the West?
That's not a point of order, Councillor
But
Macri.
it doesn't. He said it doesn't.
But that's okay. That's part of the debate. That's not a point of order that relates to the meeting procedures. There being no further discussion, I'm going to go back to the mover of the primary motion and the mover of the foreshadowed motion, just to clarify where they sit in regards to the amendments that have been proposed. So, Councillor Drury, Councillor Macri has proposed an amendment, two amendments. Firstly, that Council investigate the benefits of a bridge to Gough Whitlam Park, and secondly, give in principle support for a 21-year lease. What's your position on those two amendments? Do you wish to have them incorporated or voted on separately?
Let's incorporate them.
Okay. Those two amendments are incorporated into the primary motion. If we could just go down to the motions moved by councillors, the amendment moved by Councillor Stamoulis, which has been moved to both motions, that Council conduct a safety audit as part of the plan of management of the public walking paths through the golf course to determine if safety treatments are needed. So, Councillor Drury, do you wish to incorporate that into the primary motion?
In as much as I believe that work has already been started, I can support that.
Okay, thank you for that. That's incorporated into the primary motion. Councillor Hesse, do you wish to incorporate Councillor Stamoulis' amendment into the foreshadowed motion?
I'm happy to accept Councillor Stamoulis's amendments and also Councillor Lockie's, and point one of Councillor Macri's. It's been a long-term Green position to advocate for that bridge over the Cooks River. And I know my former colleague and Victor's former colleague, Peter Olive, has put that motion to Marrickville Council many times. So more than happy to have Victor on board. Okay. I'm on board too.
That's incorporated into the Hesse foreshadowed motion, as is Councillor Lockie's amendment for the reversible course. So that's incorporated into the foreshadowed motion, not into the primary motion, which it would be in conflict with. So with that all having been dealt with, there's no amendments to vote on, and I'll go to Councillor Drury for his right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to place on record my appreciation to Aaron Callahan and the team who works with him for the enormous amount of work that has been done on this plan of management. What we are looking at is over the next decades, setting forth over $26 million of work to those parklands, which will make a significant improvement, a significant environmental improvement, a significant community improvement, and a significant sporting improvement. Councillors, I am for steps which build our community. I am for bringing people together to engage in activities, to socialise, to have some fun. I think that's one of the things that the council is there to do. I also support, and I made it very clear at the beginning of this process, I wanted to see far better environmental outcomes. I wanted to see the questions of the Dibble waterhole put to bed once and forever. I wanted to see us address the river, not by those stupid walls that are there, but actually move to more permeable, water-sensitive urban design. What I wanted to see was a respect for the riparian zone rather than building walls along that river. That is an important river, and this plan of management will take us towards that. It achieves those objectives, and I really note the support of the mud crabs in relation to this. because the mud crabs are the ones who are down there week in, week out, working on that area. They can support it. And that says a lot to me. Look, in relation to the proposition that this needs to go out again for public exhibition, well, look, it did go out for public exhibition. It's part of the process. I think we had a couple of hundred, we had what, 600, 700 people kind of comment. The majority of them didn't want the course cut in half. The majority didn't want any reversible 9-hole, new fandangle, whatever, golf course. I'm sorry, but I just think in this modern age, sometimes we just think, you know, you can pare back things and they're the same. I don't think it is the same. I think that a 9-hole golf course is not really what people expect. It is not in conflict with the key environmental objectives. It is not, and I think we can work around, continue to work with the club as they've shown a willingness to work around the access issues to have a far better parklands for the whole community. I'd urge all councillors to support all.
Thanks, Councillor Drury. I'll now put the primary motion moved by Councillor Drury and seconded by Councillor Macri. All those in favour, please raise your hand. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, Passis, York, Drury, Macri, McKenna. Councillor Raciti, are you in support? Councillor Raciti, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Are you in support of the motion, the primary motion?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, and myself, and then against, I have councillors, if you could raise your hands, all those against the motion. We have councillors Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Lockie, and Kiat. That has been carried. Thanks very much. We'll move on to the next item. Item 3, Pride Centre expression of interest. Councillor York.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the staff's recommendation in the paper with a couple of amendments that I circulated earlier. Just to say very briefly, I mean, obviously the opportunity for the Inner West Council to host a Pride Centre at the Newtown Town Hall is a very exciting one, and it's an important step in the process. And the recommendation to open an EOI for a potential tenant or group of tenants to host and operate the Pride Centre is it's a critical step in the way forward. There's still a long way to go. And by no means, I don't expect this will be the last time that we should consider the Pride Centre at council. There'll be other opportunities, and rightly so, that we should consider all of the detail. So with that in mind, I only wanted to say a few very brief things. Essentially to note that the staff recommendation asks us to do two things, which is get started on the EOI process to test options for the Pride Centre, and secondly, and I think really importantly, to establish a representative panel of experienced Inner West LGBTIQ+ community members to provide advice on the Pride Centre and also on the EOI process. So as I said, it's only one step in the process toward establishing the Pride Centre in the Inner West, and there is a long way to go, but I think at this point there are a couple of things worth dwelling on, and the amendments that I've circulated go to those couple of things. First of all, it's really important, I think, that we acknowledge the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre and their very long-term tenancy at Newtown Town Hall since 1981, and their custodianship and care of the site, but also their huge community contribution in the area. And just restate that the council's commitment that the staff have already been working on very closely with Newtown Neighbourhood Centre on their move to Tom Foster, which is an exciting future for them. Secondly, I think it's worth sort of dwelling on the establishment of the representative advisory panel for the Pride Centre to make sure it's best placed to succeed. And I've included a few suggestions to that end, which are specifically that 2 members of the Inner West LGBTIQ working group are represented on that panel. Secondly, that we consult with the Diversity Council of Australia, who have great expertise and can help advise us on achieving the appropriate, significant level of representation that's going to be needed in that group. And some suggested further detail in the panel's terms of reference. I think those amendments are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, but I did want to note to councillors that the Inner West LGBTIQ working group are strongly supportive of the establishment of a representative panel. That panel is not intended to overlap or usurp the role of that working group. And in fact, the working group were very vocal when I visited their last meeting to say that it was critical to have a dedicated representative panel for this purpose, and that importantly, it should have diverse representation, and from their perspective that should necessarily include for the First Nations LGBTIQ community. I'd like to thank the speakers that came tonight for offering their support for the recommendation, and I think we should invite all of them to make a submission to the EOI when it's released, so that all the ideas put forward can be considered in that process. The opportunity that we have to house a Pride Centre at Newtown is unique, and it won't be an opportunity that we have forever. If we are truly committed to having a Pride Centre, we need to continue to resolve to have a Pride Centre, and if we want to have it in Newtown, we need to resolve to have it in Newtown. It's very broadly supported by the LGBTIQ community locally. And
Councillor, I'll move an extension of time of 1 minute. It's seconded by Councillor McKenna. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Please proceed.
Just to share that in the past few days, I've been in touch with a number of very well-regarded organisations expressing their support for the recommendation tonight, including Mardi Gras, PFLAG Sydney, 1040 Matrix, Heaps Gay, DIY Rainbow, the Flying Bats, just to name a few. There are others that we obviously heard from this evening as well. Happy to respond to any specific questions about the amendments that I've put forward, but as I said, I think they're self-explanatory. I think this is a terrific opportunity, an important step in the road ahead, and I thank the councillors that have indicated their support for the recommendation, and I'm really looking forward to working with you to make the Inner West Pride Centre a reality.
Thanks very much, Councillor York, and I'd like to second your motion and begin by acknowledging the hard work and dedication that you've put into bringing this proposal about. It was the first meeting, I recall, after the council election in 2017 when you brought this proposal to council. And the truth is, as we all know, in local government and in government generally, important things are not easy to do. Sometimes they take quite a while. Just ask the advocates who've been fighting to save and rebuild Ashfield Pool. These are very important issues, and commensurately, they're difficult to get done. And so I want to acknowledge Councillor York for the advocacy which she's undertaken, much of which you won't have seen in the council chamber. Most of it's been done away from the council chamber, bringing the community together, consulting with people, getting new information, working with the officers at the council to try to bring this about. And look where we are, on the doorstep of creating something truly unique and special for the LGBTIQ community here in the Inner West. And to that end, I also want to thank the council officers for their diligence in preparing this. This is a big breakthrough and a clever policy solution to both the needs of Newtown Neighbourhood Centre and to the adopted policy position of council to establish a Pride Centre. I also want to acknowledge all of the various LGBTIQ community organisations who have contributed to this and indicated their support for it, and their what I assume will be an increased level of engagement now that they see that council's actually getting it done. That's been a very important thing as well. And I just want to preempt what I presume may be, not in this chamber, but outside in the community, divisive comments about the nature of this centre. This is a community centre that is being proposed in the same way that the Greek Welfare Centre just down the road is a community centre, in the same way that COASIT is a community institution representing the Italian community. It won't be exclusive. They've never been exclusive. It will be inclusive. It will be a centre that provides services for the LGBTIQ community, a space to be used for community activity, but it won't exclude other members of the community. And I think that's very important. And because of the amendments that Councillor York has proposed, we can actually create a board, an oversight committee here that will ensure that this is a service that benefits a huge proportion of the people in the Inner West and across Sydney. So thank you very much, Councillor York, for your hard work and dedication. I congratulate you, and I look forward to seeing what will be a unique institution for Sydney come to life. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion or to propose a foreshadowed motion?
Mayor, this is Councillor Steer. I have an amendment, which I'm happy if it's incorporated. I circulated it earlier to the officer and to the councillors. And the amendment, I refer to point 3, but with Councillor York's motion, that won't matter. It can just be put on at the end. That the upstairs area of Newtown Town Hall, including the hall and meeting room, be retained for full public access and operated by a new tenant in accordance with the past practice of the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre. Now, why I'm suggesting this amendment is to ensure that that residents can still have access to the only large meeting place in Newtown for Inner West Council. And as all councillors would know, Newtown Town Hall has had massive use by the public over many, many, many years, and Newtown Neighbourhood Centre has very ably facilitated that use. And so it is important for the residents of Newtown, which is my ward, and of the Inner West, to have access to that space. Newtown Neighbourhood Centre proved that public access to that space as a meeting place is completely compatible with also using the site as the way Newtown Neighbourhood Centre did to pursue its own goals. And I have no doubt that a Pride Centre would be able to do exactly the same thing. So really, it's a motion or an amendment to put the status quo, to keep the status quo of public access to the meeting space there. Thank you.
Chair, I'd like to second Councillor Steer's motion.
Yes, Councillor Hesse, do you wish to speak to it?
Very briefly, I think Councillor Steers talked about the very clear need to maintain that connection, and having represented that ward in the past on Marrickville Council, I know the area well, and I know it's not just, of course, so public meetings, it's a whole lot of social events that have been held upstairs there, and a very important part of the community. And I think it's in the spirit of Councillor York's motion, indeed. Councillor York talks about that continuity with the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre. I think that's a very, very important thing, and that is a really pivotal part of it. I think the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre has been a LGBTIQ friendly place for as long as I can remember, having been in Newtown, which is in the era of 35 years. And I think we'd want to retain that. I'm sure that would be something a group interested in the space would be wanting to do. But I think we should make that very, very clear to reassure the community that it does retain that use. And I understand that indeed the lifts in the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre were provided as part of that broader community use. So we should keep that. I would just like to say a brief comment on the speakers, and I'd like to say thank you to them. I think they were very interesting. And I think particularly hinted at from a couple of the speakers from the Aboriginal community there. I think what was interesting there that it highlights a group in a mature LGBTIQ community, that there are still people who are marginalised. Those who are well off in our area do well off regardless of their sexuality quite often. But, and I think certainly William Trulin mentioned that it was a very friendly area generally, but I think there are people who are vulnerable in the LGBTIQ community, and I'd be really, really interested in hearing more from them. And I'm sure that Councillor York and all other councillors would be interested to see how we go there. And obviously it's a conversation that I think we all look forward to very heartily. And I hope Councillor York will accept Councillor Steer's amendment, and we can go forward together.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion, councillors? There being no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor York. I'll ask you to consider whether you'll incorporate that amendment, Councillor, before making your right of reply. You there, Councillor?
Sorry, I'm just talking to myself. Yeah, I'm here. So yes, thank you, councillors, and thank you, councillors Steer and Hesse, for your proposal. I agree with Councillor Hesse that the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre has done an incredible job managing that space, both for the services that they provide for the homeless community in the inner west, and also for making those public spaces available and managing that. And I think we've discussed before as a group retaining the community access in a similar model. So I definitely agree with the principle. I've already got in my proposed amendments a requirement or a suggestion that the representative panel help develop a space use policy that balances the needs for the LGBTIQ plus the Newtown and the Inner West communities. But if Councillors Steer and Hesse would like a further restatement of that, I would be happy to incorporate wording that says that we require EOI respondents to address in their submissions the expectation that community access to spaces in line with current practice will continue. That's a form of words that I'm comfortable with and that I think other various stakeholders will be comfortable with. I'll just email that as we speak to the minute taker. And I think gets to the principle that Councillor Steer outlined of maintaining the status quo. I just want to put on the record that this idea that creating a Pride Centre is somehow separate from access that the community should have to the town hall. A Pride Centre is intended to be a community facility and a community-run service. And the LGBTIQ plus community in the Inner West is our community. So there's no distinction there, but I take the point that people are keen to see an explicit space use agreement. So that's what I'll incorporate. I'll leave it to Councillor Steer about how she wants to proceed, but just to wrap up by means of right of reply, let me also add my thanks to the LGBTIQ working group, the Inner West LGBTIQ working group, for their various advice and support to get us to this point. I'd also really like to thank Matt Howard, who was really the genesis of the idea and has been relentless in his advice and ongoing advocacy for the concept of a Pride Centre. And so thank you, Matt, and I hope we can get to the next stage this evening. I'd like to again acknowledge and thank Liz Yeo and the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre for all of the work that they've done at Newtown Town Hall for such a long time, and for being an amazing neighbour and an amazing citizen organisation in our area. And I know that that will continue at Tom Foster, and I look forward to council continue to working with them in that capacity. And I'd really like to thank the council officers who've been working on this for quite a long time now, as the Mayor said, since maybe the first meeting of council. So particularly Erla Ronan, and in her absence more recently, Carolyn McLeod and then Michael Daly and Liz Richardson, all of whom have been graciously responding to all of my ideas and suggestions. So thank you to the council staff, and I agree with the Mayor that this is a creative way forward and solution to this excellent proposition. I am most excited for our LGBTIQ community in the Inner West to have a potential hub for connection and a community space that addresses some of the challenges that were identified way back in the Rainbow Roundtable a few years ago of isolation in parts of the LGBTIQ community. This is a really exciting proposition that if we can realise it and make it happen, we can all be proud of, and I know I really am. So thanks, councillors.
Thanks very much, Councillor York. I'll just go briefly to Councillor Steer. So I think the substance of your concern has been addressed by the amendment to the York motion. Did you still want to pose that amendment, Councillor Steer?
Yes, I do. And I thank Councillor York.
You've already spoken to it, so we'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the Steer-Hesse amendment, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Stamalis, Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Kiat, Macri, and all those against, please raise your hands. I have councillors York, Lockie, McKenna, Drury. Councillor Rosidi, how are you voting on this one?
Against.
Against the amendment?
Yes.
And myself, which leaves us with 6 for and 7 against. That has been defeated. I'll now put the primary motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support, I have councillors Stamalis, Hesse, De Cruz, York, Lockie, Steer, McKenna, Drury, Rosidi, Kiat, and myself. And against, I have councillors Macri, and Councillor Passis is not in attendance. That has been carried. Next item, item 5, Part Elizabeth Street road closure. Councillor McKenna? Sorry, Councillor, I can't hear you.
4 first.
Oh,
Item 4.
Yep, sorry about that, Councillor. I got confused. New South Wales Public Spaces Legacy Program.
Mayor, may I move that?
Yep. Seconder for the motion?
I'll second
happy
it.
to second.
Seconded by Councillor McKenna. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Next item, item 5, Part Elizabeth Street road closure and sale. Councillor McKenna.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, can you hear me?
I can now, yes. But Councillor McKenna has the call, Councillor Passis.
I wanted to ask a question on the last item. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McKenna, please proceed.
Oh, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the speakers that came tonight to speak about this proposal. We've been very clear in our support for the private schools and all the schools in our area, and over many years. There's no doubt that PLC is an amazing school. It's a beautiful place for a few hundred very privileged young women. I've actually seen some of their science work. I've seen their junior school science lab, and it's something that most people would dream about and most kids would dream about. It is amazing. Unfortunately, this proposal has come to us at the end of a process. It's somewhat like the unsolicited planning proposals that we see, especially in the old Marrickville and Leichhardt council areas, where they come to us when the officers have done an awful lot of work with the proponents, and we get to make the decision at the end of the process. I became aware that this was a possibility probably about a year ago. I certainly spoke to the CEO at the time, and as nothing seemed to happen, I thought it had gone away. But it is a real concern that once again, and I will, for those of you who aren't aware of the history, and before my time, even on Ashfield Council, so more than 16 years ago, a lot of bits and pieces of land and parts of roadways have been sold to PLC. So they've been the recipient over years of the goodwill of the council in supporting their school. It's enabled the school to grow, and of course it is mostly in Burwood Council area these days, and they've had similar response from Burwood Council. But I think we really have reached a point in time where we can't just sell off public assets anymore. So I'm proposing, and I did put, I did send a proposed recommendation through to the minute taker, and I hope it's there for you to see. The small section of road in Elizabeth Street, which PLC wants to provide extra parking spaces for their staff and for their new building, it's just it's just really unacceptable. It's only half a dozen parking spaces, but it is used by locals. It's used by the churchgoers. It's used by the small business community that is nearby, which has almost nowhere to park. It is just not acceptable that a school thinks they can put in an unsolicited proposal to buy off a council-owned land, and we hear about this at the end of the process. I'm sorry that they've done a lot of work. It would have been good if we'd been able to make a decision on this right at the beginning. I don't want to support the loss of any more public places. So I seek the support of council to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Discussion.
I'm happy to second that.
Seconded by Councillor De Cruz.
I'll second.
Yeah,
I can second that, Darcy.
Yes,
yep, I'm happy to second that motion, and certainly the feedback from the community.
Sorry, Councillor, I heard you say it the first 4 times. You're seconding it. Would you like to speak to it?
All right, okay. Yeah, just briefly that I support Councillor McKenna's view that the community is concerned about the loss of parking and the loss of public space in that vicinity, and that we should not support the sale or closure of this laneway. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any councillor who wishes to move a foreshadowed motion or an amendment? If not, I'll go to Councillor McKenna for her right of reply, to which there is nothing to reply. Councillor McKenna?
Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, Hesse.
Mr Mayor, may I speak?
Yes. Sorry, Councillor. I was asking before if any councillor wished to speak.
I couldn't get through. I don't know what's going on, if it's your end or my end.
That's fine. We've got to be patient with each other when we're dealing remotely. Did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. First of all, I don't know why it's called Elizabeth Street. It has nothing to do with Elizabeth Street. It's not in line with Elizabeth Street. Secondly, the school has taken over so much of that area. They just have to go up. They can't expand anymore or take over our parking spots. I wouldn't have a problem if the school could reinstate those 6 or 7 spots in the area that they plan on taking for their building. Have they thought about that? As Councillor McKenna said, the shops there are doing it very hard. They don't have a car park. It is very, very congested. And the churchgoers. 6 spots are a lot of spots. Now, the speaker from the school, I can't recall his name, said that his teachers are taking up streets and this will take them off the street or whatever. The school hasn't been a good neighbour. Every time they've developed, they've never let the surrounding people know. There's been congestion. The people have been ignored. And I cannot understand why they need so much parking for their staff in the first instance. They're right alongside a railway station. They would do well to go back and maybe give some concessions to their teachers and their pupils to catch public transport. I cannot support this because I cannot support parking spaces that are so rare, especially in that part of Croydon, to be taken away. And I really do think it's extra work for our staff to have to be going through all this. And we have to look at, I think it's about time we started to have a policy or put something out that we don't mislead the people thinking that they do have the chance of getting any more of our streets. We sold an Elizabeth Street to Wests. We've sold that many things past council, the Ashfield Council. Our town hall, we sold streets in our CBD. And it's a bit late now to try and stop it, but we can't keep doing this. These parking spots, these spots in the city are worth millions. And just to sort of give it away like that is unacceptable. We can't do it anymore. This is not against the school. I'm not against private schools. If private schools closed and we did not support them and went into the public system, they couldn't handle it. I'm not against them at all. But Trinity at least spent money and put parking underground. They were giving the residents around that area absolute hell. A message has to go out. You either go up or move out. We cannot put our residents through this anymore and sell off any more public assets.
Thank you, Councillor Passis. Councillor, I'll now put the vote. All those in favour of the McKenna de Cruz motion, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, Hesse, Passis, de Cruz, Steer, Lockie, McKenna, Drury, Racidi, Kiat, Macri, York, and myself. That has been carried unanimously. Next item, Inner West Public Toilet Strategy. Councillor Macri is out of the gate like Kathy in 2000.
Chair, this is one of the legacy Marrickville policies that I actually brought in when I was a mayor. It's working well in Marrickville, so it's been adopted by the Inner West Council as the way to go. I'm very proud to move the toilet strategy. A little bit of Marrickville on everyone.
I'll second that, seeing that I was called the councillor for toilets.
Okay, I don't think there's a lot of, there's a need for a lot of toilet humour in this debate. And it seems as though there's unanimity. So I'll put the Macri Passis motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I assume that's unanimous. Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against the motion? No, that has been carried unanimously. Next item, Neighbourhood Centre Policy. Councillors.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Brian, I'd like to move a alternate proposal.
Yeah, I had Councillor Passis first, Councillor Kiat, so I'll go to her first and then you. Councillor Passis, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. And then again, I can't hear you. No. You seem to be getting put back on mute as soon as you press unmute. So either there's a trick being played on you or there's some problem with the technology. No, Councillor Passis, I can't hear you. All right, I'm going to go to Councillor Kiat first. Councillor Kiat.
Well, I'd like to move an alternate proposal to what's printed in the papers. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Liz Richardson for her advice on this issue. And also, I really want to thank the residents who spoke today, Gail, David, and Cole, and the other councillors I've spoken to about this issue. Can I just ask that the minute taker put the alternate proposal on the screen? I think you would have heard the quite significant issues that were raised by the residents today that are consistent with the report.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
I can hear you now, but Councillor Kiat has the floor.
Those concerns raised were entirely consistent with and perhaps extended on the issues that are presented to us in the papers tonight. It's very concerning. We've been talking about Newtown Neighbourhood Centre, and it's a real shame for Summerhill that we actually don't have in the Summerhill area a similarly thriving and vibrant centre of the community in the Summerhill Community Centre. And in fact, what we've heard tonight is that it's in fact excluding local residents, that there are many complaints from those who are able to use the centre, and that it's not really providing the services that the community is looking for. The only change really that I am putting forward tonight to the officer's recommendation is that we not proceed to further lease negotiations with the Summerhill Community Centre Inc. And the reason for that is council officers have over a number of years tried to reach terms with the Summerhill Community Centre Inc. But I think that what we've heard tonight suggests that a different approach is needed. And I think that what we should do tonight is move toward an EOI process where we can actually, the Summerhill Community Centre Inc. can participate in that, but we really want to hear from the community as to what they want out of their neighbourhood centre, and then go to a competitive process where we can hear from a number of different community organisations as to how they can deliver this service for the community. It's something that the residents in Summerhill are really crying out for. It's not a new issue. It's been going on for a long time. And I want to thank the officers for finally bringing it to us. The final thing that I want to say is, I guess this is, there's a lot of detail between council officers and the solicitor for the Summerhill Community Centre Inc. What we're doing tonight, what I'm proposing, is not about immediately ceasing our relationship with Summerhill Community Inc. or immediately terminating their lease, but it's about inviting them and other community organizations to engage in an EOI following community consultation. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
I'll just see if there's a seconder for the primary motion, first of all. Councillor Passis, is there a seconder for the Kiat motion?
Yes, I'll second it. Councillor Steer.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Steer will second the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Okay, Councillor Passis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. What I would like, Mr. Mayor, is that this is deferred and that the Mayor, interested councillors and the staff and the management committee of the community centre get together and sit down. And first of all, the report, I have some great concerns with the report. Really, I think this should have been in closed committee. There's been a lot of allegations made here, but there is no supporting documentation of signed written complaints about this whole issue. I'm aware of this community centre for years and years. They've been there for years. Alcoholics Anonymous, there's plenty of groups that haven't been contacted, that haven't had a chance to speak. I know how this community centre operates and for how long it's been operating. They haven't received their funding. All this started in 2019. There's politics involved in this. A lot of allegations have been made in the report, but there are a lot of things that still haven't been said that the move to take over this community centre by certain people. I know for a fact that the management committee over the years, we own that building, council owns that building. The maintenance was left run down. I know the management committee and the operator there was painting rooms himself, trying to keep the place together. They had no air conditioning till last term on council. The place was run down, so much work that council ignored that the management committee maintained themselves. Now, these allegations in this report are really, really unacceptable unless there is supporting documentation. So, Mr. Mayor, I hope, just for the benefit of both sides, putting their case across and to refute these allegations, if they're true, fair enough. If there is no evidence to refute it, I know that the place has been run in the proper manner. They have not received their funding what they were supposed to last year. COVID has come in now, and this council is saying how we're going to support people that have lost out with COVID. And then we come out with this now. We must, this report does in a way say we need to go back and sit down. We need to go and sit down, as I said, with you, Mayor, interested councillors, staff, and the management committee. I know the history of the place and I know the history of most of the speakers. And I think councillors will be surprised that this type of thing is going on.
Thank you, Councillor. Your time has expired. So Councillor Passis is moving deferral of the entire policy. I presume that includes all of the points, Councillor Passis, in the proposed recommendation. So is there a seconder for that motion for deferral?
I will.
Councillor Rossetti will second the motion for deferral, so that becomes the foreshadowed motion. Councillors?
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Stamos.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be supporting the Passis Rossetti foreshadowed motion on the basis of one thing. I would like to see our council set up accountable and transparent processes for when concerns are raised. That is, that the operators of the centre have the full opportunity to meet with council, and that council convenes these meetings and wants to hear from the management of the centre, and also to take into account the sorts of comments that we heard earlier this evening from residents and community groups. So I want to ensure that our council takes a very solid approach to this, impartial approach to this, and can assess these things appropriately and make good judgments at the end. So I will support the motion on the foreshadowed motion on the basis that our council should endeavour always to seek out a best process forward and to make recommendations from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Kiat, for your motion recommendation. This is not a new issue. This has been going on for years, and this is an opportunity for the Summerhill Community Centre Committee to come forward with a proposal to start afresh and be part of a competitive EOI process. It is nothing new, and despite what we hear, it would be going back at least 6 or 7 years that I'm aware of, where there's been issues between the committee and the council, the former Ashfield Council and now the Inner West Council. So there really is nothing to be gained by stalling. There's nothing to be gained by further discussions. We know that our staff have had a lot of discussions with the committee. We also know that the former Ashfield Council staff had ongoing discussions for years and couldn't resolve the issues. So I do think it's an opportunity. The committee should see it as an opportunity, and if they want to participate in this competitive process, they can come forward with their proposal for what they would like to do. But what we want is a true community centre, not a room booking service that's closed all the time. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Further discussion, councillors? Councillor Macri?
Chair, I'm just going to move an amendment. I sent it over to Ian Naylor, if you can put it up. And it's just the changes at point 4 that we invite the representatives of the Summerhill Community Centre to make representations to staff and councillors with the organisation's response to submissions during the 2-month period. 5, failing agreements on terms as per the 3 above, council determines to put caretaker arrangements and conduct expressions of interest process. I just think as a councillor, giving the respect to a long-standing organisation that's run a facility, I've heard people that were unhappy, but I haven't really heard the side of the people that were running the facility. And I'm not going to say who's right or who's wrong until I've heard both sides. And it just, I haven't had anything to do with this centre. And it's just the natural justice I'll give anyone in this situation. That's all.
So, Councillor Macri, you're moving an amendment to the foreshadowed motion, is that right, or to the primary motion?
To the primary motion. I've
Okay.
sent it over to Ian, so it differs from the primary motion at point 4.
Yeah, okay. Can I ask the minute takers to please provide that amendment on the screen so that we're all familiar with it? Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion at this time. I'll just wait for the minute takers to be able to provide a copy of the Macri amendment so that we can consider it. Okay, that's just taking a moment. I might just speak very briefly to the matter. I want to begin by thanking the members of the public who attended the public forum earlier to let us know about the situation that they had faced. I think all of us as elected representatives have had intimate involvement with various membership-based organisations, and it certainly is unusual to have an NGO such as that systematically refusing memberships or rejecting them. Every organisation I've ever been a member of is desperate for new members. I'm sure Marrickville Golf Course could attest to that. So, look, it's clear that there are some issues there with the governance of the centre. That's readily apparent. And I've met with a number of the residents who've expressed concerns, as well as the management and previous chair of the Summerhill Neighbourhood Centre. And as you'll recall, when this motion was proposed, which was quite some time ago by myself, I put a lot of work into consulting with Newtown Neighbourhood Centre and Summerhill Community Centre, because I thought it was an important thing that we have a neighbourhood centres policy and that we differentiate between generalist neighbourhood centres, which provide a cross-section of, broad, diverse services to a different cross-sections of the community, that they are unique and different. And it's disappointing that at this stage, there hasn't been an agreement that's been able to be reached in accordance with that policy between the council officers and the Summerhill Community Centre. I'm not familiar with all of the background at Ashfield Council. I know it was a very long-standing issue and that there were lots of discrepancies and disagreements. I'm not really concerned with all of that. I just want to try and get a positive outcome for the community now. And the community we're talking about is Summerhill, which is one of the best suburbs in Sydney. Lackey Street is such a fantastic place that and this neighbourhood centre is located in such a key strategic location, it could be fantastic. And that should be our objective, to make sure that it's being really well utilised by the community and that there's lots of positive things happening there and that it's a genuine hub for the local community. I'm agnostic as to whether that could be provided by the Summerhill Community Centre or by another organisation. My preference would be that councillors would have an opportunity to actually hear directly from the neighbourhood centre prior to making a decision about going out to an EOI. And to that end, whilst I've only just had a chance to have a look at it, I support the Councillor Macquarie's amendment. I think when you're undertaking a process such as this, that, let's be honest, could result in the neighbourhood centre not continuing in that location, that it's best for all concerned if we can demonstrate that we are completely open to hearing their explanation about what's been occurring, and that councillors will be in a better position to make a final determination once they've heard from themselves, not just from the management, but from the members of the centre who are concerned. So I'm in support of the primary motion, but I'm also in support of the amendment to the primary motion.
Mr Mayor.
Yes.
Mr Mayor, could I ask Councillor Macquarie, in point 2 of Councillor Macquarie's amendment, I would rather that be reworded to following step 1 above, that council will determine whether to, etc., etc. Following step 1.
Yeah, I understand, Councillor. I'm not sure that you can move an amendment to the amendment. Councillor Macquarie, are you of a mind to...
what the issue is? What's the issue, John?
The issue is it's got their failing agreements. Well, who's going to determine that? I'd rather this come back to council as a...
It would have to come back to council then, yes.
Yes, so following step 1 above, council will determine whether to put out an EOI, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So can we change that, Mr Mayor?
Sure, that's fine with me.
Yeah, Councillor Macquarie can determine that. Okay, well, that's been amended. I'm not sure that it makes a huge difference, but that's okay. There's no further discussion. I'll go to... Yes.
Well, I agree with what you said, and I agree with what Councillor Macquarie and Stamoulis has said. This gives everybody a chance to lay their cards on the table.
Well,
you did say...
Point of order. Can I
You've
just...
already spoken to the motion. So thank you for indicating your support for the Macquarie amendment. I'm happy to be the seconder for it. So,
now, Mr Mayor,
yeah,
could I would like to be the seconder for it, but never mind, you can. You're the mayor. You take precedence over me.
No, all good. Yep.
You mentioned Lackey Street and how good Summerhill is.
Yeah.
I think also we invite all the shopkeepers from Summerhill to this meeting.
Order, Mayor.
Because they know...
Point of order, Mayor, come on.
Sorry, Councillor Drury, I'm doing my best. Councillor Kiat had made a point of order before your interjection. Councillor Kiat?
Okay, it's always the same too. Never mind, I'll be quiet.
Sorry,
always.
Councillor Kiat has a point of order. Councillor Kiat?
Councillor Passis has already spoken to this item.
He didn't have a point of order when Councillor Lockie came in 3 times telling us how to play golf.
I'm going to read in support. I'm going to rule in support of Councillor Kiat's point of order. Councillor Passis, you have already spoken to this motion. So I'll go to...
I'd like to raise another point of order in relation to the amendment. With respect, I don't think it's coherent with the primary
Could I ask how many Greens are on side with you on this, Councillor Kiat? How many Greens spoke tonight against the community centre?
Councillor Passis, I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat, I'd like to understand your point of order. Please proceed.
I'd like people to declare their interests, their political interests.
Councillor Passis, I'll be adjourning the meeting or asking the minute takers to turn your microphone off if you don't stop interjecting. Councillor Kiat.
Very surprised that Councillor Passis is talking about interest, given that she was on the Committee of Management quite recently of this community centre.
I beg your pardon, what did you just say?
I said I'm surprised you're raising the issue of conflict of interest, given that you were on the...
I am so glad you've just said that on the website. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Kiat, I'd really like to hear your point of order.
Thank you. So it refers in point 1 to a 2-month period. I believe that refers the 2-month period that was in the officer's recommendation, but is not in my proposal. And it also refers to agreement to terms, which again refers to point 3 in the original recommendation, which I've deleted from my motion.
I'm sorry, I'm getting quite lost, Councillor Kiat. Your motion.
Can I clear this up? This is actually to go with the actual original motion that's on the business paper, not attached to Councillor Kiat's motion.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would be a further foreshadowed motion then, Councillor Macri.
Lord, Councillor Kiat has deleted points. Okay. Ian, can you just put up the entire motion as it was?
The officer's recommendation?
No, the entire, as it read, as I sent it to you. Sorry. I sent it to you as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I just raise a point of order, Mayor. We've got a primary motion. We've got a foreshadowed motion.
I'm doing my best, Councillor Kiat. I haven't been able to interpret what your point of order is because your motion's not before us, and I haven't had a chance to study it between 5 o'clock when you sent it through and now. So if we could scroll back up to your motion and you could explain for me again what it is, what your point of order is.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the primary change to the officer's recommendation is the deletion of point 3.
Well, just explain to me why the Macri amendment is out of order for your primary motion. Ignore the officer's recommendation; it hasn't been tabled.
Sure. I think Councillor Macri agrees with me on this. Is that his amendments seek to amend a point that I deleted, which was that we seek within 2 months to agree to terms with the Summerhill Community Inc. in relation to a new lease. So I think he's saying that his amendment has no coherence with my proposal. And so he's saying that he wants to amend the officer's recommendation. Unfortunately, we already have a primary proposal and a foreshadowed motion. So I don't think he can do that.
I don't think, essentially what Councillor Macri is moving is an amendment to which could be addressed in your motion, which would simply delay the decision to undertake the EOI until there had been this consultation session that Councillor Macri is proposing. So it's not contradictory to either the officer's recommendation or to your motion. It's a motion that would see it's an amendment that would see your motion not enacted until that consultation session had taken place. So I'll rule that way in regards to your point of order, and I'll go back to you to ask whether you're willing to incorporate the Macri amendment into your primary motion, or whether it should be voted on.
It should be voted on.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's an amendment moved by Councillor Macri, seconded by myself. So I'll put the Macri-Byrne amendment to be voted on. If it's defeated, then we'll vote simply on Councillor Kiat's motion as tabled. If that's defeated, then we'll vote on the foreshadowed motion for deferral. So if we could just scroll back up, thank you very much. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Macri, Raciti, I've lost everybody here, Stamoulis, Passis, and myself. And all those against, please raise your hands. I have Councillors Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Lockie, Drury, Kiat, McKenna, and York. That has been defeated. We'll now deal with the primary motion. All those in favour of the primary motion, please raise your hands and keep them raised. We have Councillors Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Lockie, Drury, Kiat, McKenna, York, and myself. All those against, please raise your hands. Against, we have Councillors Stamoulis, Passis, Macri, and Raciti. That has been carried. Next item. We're on to the local traffic committee meeting.
Chair, I'll move that.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I assume there's no debate, councillors. Anyone wish to amend anything?
One question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, the Lilyfield, exhibition of the Lilyfield parking study, a number of residents have expressed concern that with the potential changes that RMS might undertake in that area, we know that they're possibly imminent. Will this impact on the quality of that study or the effectiveness of that study? So I'd like to put that question, if I could, before we put it on exhibition. Thank you.
I'll put that question to the officers.
Councillors, I think that's been considered as part of this process. We're keeping in close liaison with RMS about that. But if there's any change, we'll come back to council.
Mr. Mayor.
Just one moment, Councillor Passos. Councillor Stamos, does that address your question?
Well, okay, if we've factored that into the study, then yes, I'm happy for it to go out for 28 days, and then residents can make further comments at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Passos.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't know who can answer this for me. I noticed that in the past traffic committees, we always had a rep from Jodie McKay from Stratfield. Can you tell me, does she have a rep on this traffic committee?
I have no idea, Councillor Passos. I can pose that question to the chair, Councillor Macri, if you'd like.
All the members are listed here, and I don't think she has a rep. No.
Is there any reason for that? They're supposed to be
sorry,
a rep.
I can confirm she does.
She does?
No, sorry, I can confirm she does.
Wasn't attended.
Yeah. She has attended, the rep has attended meetings in the past. May not have attended this meeting, but when Croydon Road issue came up, they were there.
Well, it's not.
Thank you for that. The question has been addressed, Councillor Passos. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make on the actual local traffic committee minutes?
No, not on the minutes, but it's not there that there's an apology from the rep for the member for Stratfield.
Are you moving an amendment, Councillor Passos?
I beg your pardon?
Are you moving an amendment?
Yes, I would move. Can that be documented from
Point
now
of
on?
order, Mayor. Point of order. What
What's
has this got to do with the minutes of the traffic committee? This is a puerile little political stunt.
I beg your pardon. I beg you know, I have a point of order. Have a look at the page of the agenda. It says who's on the committee and apologies. The Stratfield member has no apologies and there's no name of any rep. What is the problem?
Yeah, I'm calling the meeting to order, and I will adjourn the meeting if there's a further interjection. I don't believe Councillor Drury was actually referenced a point of order, but I'm going to make one, a ruling, which is that this is not relevant to the adoption of the local traffic committee minutes.
It's not relevant.
No.
If there's
well, we haven't got the full representation of the traffic committee.
Councillor Passos, if there's no items relating to that area, the rep is not required, and we're not meeting in person, we're meeting by correspondence.
I'll call the meeting to order.
That is not the point.
There being no further discussion on the traffic committee minutes themselves, I'll put the motion for adoption. All those in favour? Against? Please raise your... that is carried unanimously unless there's any councillor who wishes to be recorded.
Mr. Mayor, I'm against how this whole issue has been treated.
The adoption of the
yes, and I'll be raising this.
That has been carried with Councillor Passos against, which brings us to the next item, item 9, councillor representation on committees. Councillors, can I suggest, just as a very simple procedure, the only reason that this is coming up is because of the extension of the council term. I would like to propose that all membership of all councillor representation of committees is maintained unchanged. Councillor Hesse, are you seconding that motion?
I'm happy to second it with one amendment. Sorry, Councillor Byrne. As we all know, Councillor Porteous is not well, and she well, I'm available to replace her on the General Manager's Performance Assessment Panel, and he would be okay with that. So basically, one very minor amendment for me to replace Councillor Porteous on the General Manager's Performance Assessment Panel, because
I'd be very happy to incorporate that, Councillor Hesse, but I would prefer to receive notification from Councillor Porteous prior to replacing her that is her preference.
I understand that, Councillor Byrne, but you'd understand, of course, that Councillor Porteous is not writing a lot at the moment. It was a telephone conversation. So
okay, I'll take your word for it if it's been agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hesse is seconding my motion.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
Sorry, Councillor Passis, could I finish a sentence? Would that be okay?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if my computer's working or not.
Thank you. So Councillor Hesse is seconding my motion that we continue with all existing councillor representation on committees, with the replacement of Councillor Hesse for Councillor Porteous on the General Manager's Performance Review Panel. Is there anyone who wishes to further speak? Yes, you can, Councillor Passis. Once you've stopped interjecting, please proceed.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that it should be kept as the status quo just because there's been an extra year on the term. It is an extra year. And I don't know why the General Manager's Review Panel is even on this. The old panel is still in midstream. There has been no review. So this should not even be on here. I don't know what's going on with this, what this agenda and what's going on with this council. The panel should not be on this in a list of committees, and it should not be the status quo. And this Zoom meeting and the way these meetings are being railroaded has to stop.
Okay, thank you for that.
We are a council and we're in charge of 200,000 people, and these games that are playing have to stop.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Passis. I think most of what you've just said is not relevant to the discussion of this motion.
No, everything I say is not relevant. That's because you don't want to address them. That's why we've got so many, we're in so much trouble.
Sorry, Councillor Passis, if I'm just doing my best to chair the meetings, really. That's all I'm doing. And
you're doing the best to chair the meeting that suits you. Railroad councillors, shut them up.
Well, I think
and this will not continue.
Passes, so I don't know how I could railroad you while I'm being abused. So I'd ask
point of order, Mayor. This is an outrageous attack on you as the chair of this meeting.
We know where you're coming from.
This must stop.
You know how to attack. You know how to attack, and that's why you're.
Mayor, I believe she should be given a warning for this outrageous attack on you as the chair of this meeting.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Drury. Councillor Passis, if you don't desist, I will request that your microphone be turned off or adjourn the meeting. I take the point that you've made in regards to the performance review panel. I can confirm as the chair of the panel that it is the normal course of events that the same councillors would remain on the panel throughout the term of council. In this instance, there's a minor amendment being made, which is readily explainable and which we're all familiar with. So I don't think there's a problem there. So I'll put the Hesse-Byrne recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, Hesse, Steer, De Cruz, Lockie, Drury, Kiat, Macri,
I found this on the
McKenna, York, and Rossetti, and myself. And against, I have all those against. No, it doesn't appear that there's anyone against. That has been carried unanimously. Next item, Inner West Go Solar. To receive a note, I'll move the officer's recommendation, seconded by Councillor York. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
No, thank you for the information. Look forward to seeing more about those projects.
Okay, thank you. I'll put that then. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously, I presume. Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against it? No? Excellent. Next item, item 11, investment strategy and portfolio review.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Stamoulis, there a seconder? Seconded by
I'll
Councillor
second that.
Seconded by
Can I
Councillor
just briefly say, I just want to thank the staff for this report. I think it shows a very, very impressive result. We all know that we achieved 100% divestment from fossil fuels in our investment portfolio, and this report shows that we're doing very well in terms of our returns. I think that's, as we've remarked before, that's a great example to other councils and other institutions with large investment portfolios. And this report details how we've done that by maintaining a very high credit rating in terms of our investments, which is required by T Corp. I did have a look around on the council website to see whether this is listed amongst council's actions on climate change, and was sorry to see that it's not there. I think it's a really great achievement. The only thing I could find on the website about it was the media release in relation to the date on which we did achieve 100% divestment. And I think it would be great actually if this achievement could be included amongst the actions that council is taking on climate change. It's a campaign that most people in our community are familiar with in other institutions, but I don't know that everyone would be aware that council has made this achievement. So I won't move a motion to that effect. I think we've discussed it before, but I just think that it's something that we should consider.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously, I presume. Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against it? No. We'll move on to item 12. Councillor Stamoulis.
Mr Mayor, thank you. This is very straightforward. As we know, the Annandale community recently lost Buruwan Park, and that certainly was a loss of a very important area that was fought for, and it's one of the more recent parks too in the area, and we lost a lot of vegetation there in our ward, Mr Mayor, and we lost the park itself. But across the road, there's a big opportunity for council to undertake a naming process. I'm putting this before council, that we undertake a consultation process, and also to put forward the word Buruwan, which is well known in that immediate area. So I'll put that for discussion amongst councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. It's a very sensible proposal. I'm certainly happy to second it. I presume there is no councillor who is against the motion. Therefore, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Is there any councillor who wishes to report voting against it? No? Excellent. Next item, item 13, uranium mining ban in New South Wales.
Thank you. I'd like. I'm actually just going to send a slight amendment to the motion on the papers, following up the representation from Miss Hinman. So I'd like to begin by thanking the two speakers who came to speak, Mr. Dean and Mr. Hinman, and Ms. Hinman, the points they made, and they articulated the case of against lifting the ban of the 33-year-old ban on uranium mining in New South Wales, and also to acknowledge how they also articulated about Mr. Treffel's long-term contribution and campaigning against uranium mining and nuclear power and nuclear weapons. As samples of our, or examples of representatives of our community, our residents have long opposed uranium mining. An anti-uranium dance was held in Balmain Town Hall in 1978. Graffiti in Annandale recorded the late night transportation of uranium through Annandale to White Bay. There are nuclear-free signs on electricity poles throughout Leichhardt, Marrickville local government areas. And in 2017, following pressure from Leichhardt Council and the City of Sydney, local government super reversed their decision to invest in uranium-related industries. Councillors are calling you to reaffirm our constituent council's opposition to uranium mining and nuclear energy, and we write to the Premier and New South Wales MPs, urging them to support renewable clean energy and jobs in this field. And with that, we further inform our residents of our resolution opposing uranium mining and nuclear energy by way of a media release and item in our newsletter. Further, that in West Council puts forward a motion to local government New South Wales for New South Wales Council to oppose any move to ban uranium mining, and for local government New South Wales to New South Wales Premier and MPs urging them to support sustainable and clean energy, to support energy and jobs in that field. Thank you. Just looking at my slide amendment that was on the papers, I've added that sorry about that. On point 3, I've added that we receive a report on providing additional nuclear-free zone signs incorporating the Inner West logo on poles. So thank you.
Yes, I'm seconding this.
Yeah.
This Councillor Steer, I'm seconding this motion.
Yeah, Councillor Steer.
Yes, and I will speak to it. 33 years ago, I was marching again in favour of nuclear disarmament in the Pacific, and I never thought that we would have to revisit this issue of whether we should mine uranium in New South Wales. We thought we'd won that battle forever, but it just goes to show that you need to be eternally vigilant. I support this motion for all the reasons that Councillor Cruz has said, and also because it follows on from the motion that I proposed in November 2018, which was supported by the councillors, that Inner West Council write to the Foreign Minister to urge them to support the UN Treaty Against Nuclear Weapons. And that treaty is now only 5 countries away from being ratified. 45 countries have ratified that treaty. Unfortunately, Australia is not one of them, despite our efforts. But all that means is on Inner West, we need to keep bringing this to public attention. And so Parliament has recently debated this, New South Wales Parliament, without notice and without warning. It was a great surprise to us all, but it shows that we must make sure that the gains that we have achieved against nuclear weapons and against uranium mining continue in forever and ever and ever. We know that uranium is used for nuclear weapons, and we know that a number of countries around the world now have nuclear weapons. The nuclear threat is actually worse now than it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, because so many more countries now have nuclear weapons and everyone thinks that they can use them safely for themselves while nuking all of their enemies into the ground. This is outdated extinction thinking that we must combat. The other use for uranium is in nuclear power, and we have seen from Chernobyl and Fukushima exactly what can happen when nuclear power goes wrong. Fukushima in particular is still poisoning the Pacific. It is still causing mutations in fish. It is still causing high levels of thyroid cancer amongst the people of Japan. And it is still, and the water levels, the land and everything there are still contaminated. The entire Pacific has been contaminated and is still being contaminated by Fukushima, even though, and that is a secret that has been very well kept for a number of reasons. Earlier this year, we visited the Peace Boat, which is a boat that travels the world to advise people about the horrors of nuclear weapons. It's a Japanese boat, and it focuses on Hiroshima, where my father was stationed, as I have spoken about before, in 1946. And these things are real. They're real to me. They should be real to all of you. And we can show and lead the way, as we have so often on Inner West Council, that by taking a stand, we show other councils and lead the way to encourage a great movement to stop uranium mining in New South Wales. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Steer and Councillor De Cruz. And Councillor De Cruz, I wish to thank you for what is a very important and substantive motion. I have a minor amendment which I'll come to, but I don't wish to negate my support for your motion by addressing that in the first instance. I came across recently the Hansard of what Tom Uren had said in 1978 during a parliamentary debate about uranium. And of course, this was within the context of the Whitlam government's ban on uranium mining having been lifted in 1976. And Tom said the following: "There is no way that we can be sure that Australian uranium, once it leaves the ground, will not find its way to a nuclear weapon during the 250,000 years life of the plutonium it contains." And that statement is as true today as it was in 1978. It is, I think, quite depressing and dispiriting to discover that the New South Wales government is seriously in support of uranium mining in 2020. Worse still, that their policy position has been dictated by a bill in the Parliament moved by Mark Latham of the One Nation Party and agreed to by the Coalition because of a threat from John Barilaro, not the first, not the last, to walk out on the Coalition if there was not support for the One Nation bill on uranium mining. What a sorry state of affairs. So I think it's perfectly legitimate for the council to adopt a strong position on this, and I think the motion you've drafted is very good. It's my preference in my role as an elected representative to focus on policy positions at council, the things we are responsible for, but I also recognise that there is a long tradition in our community of councils standing up and advocating on issues that are not local, and in fact to sometimes take a position on foreign affairs as well as local affairs. I do think that there's lots of people in our community, though, who are against clutter. That is, they think there's already enough signs on the street. I've already, and obviously not all of those are protest signs, many of them are outdated street signs. I've previously moved a motion or an amendment to something that we were debating at this council to say that we should probably take down the nuclear-free zone signs. I lost that debate. Fair enough, not a big deal. But I think we actually weaken the strength of this policy position if we then adopt a position saying we're going to get a report from council officers on providing additional nuclear-free zones which incorporate the Inner West logo, which many of the councillors in attendance tonight opposed. So I just worry that we'll be opening ourselves to ridicule from a tabloid publication. So I'm going to move, as well as my strong support for your motion, and thanks for you having tabled it, I'm going to move an amendment to delete point 3. Councillors, further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'll be supporting your amendment to remove point 3. And in doing so, I think there's an opportunity to beef up point 4. That is, we have a wide variety of opportunities. That is our website, Twitter, Facebook. We have great ways to get this motion out to thousands and thousands of people when they're sitting at home, not just driving around the streets or walking around the streets. And additionally, our rates notices, we could use that opportunity as well to get this out to the mass public. I think councillors are well aware of my stance on the roads to recovery signs, which absolutely litter our area. This isn't litter, of course. This is very, very important messaging. But I think any way that our council can provide very, very strong, high volume messaging to our people without signage, I would prefer.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any further amendments? If not, I'll just ask Councillor De Cruz. I assume you're not willing to incorporate that, but I'll just clarify that with you.
No, I'm not willing to incorporate it. Look, I think that the
No problem.
Signs are actually of historical importance within
the reasons for not incorporating it into your right of reply. So the amendment is not incorporated. So we'll vote on that subsequent to Councillor De Cruz's right of reply. Councillor De Cruz?
Yeah, look, I'd just briefly discuss the point 3 and the nuclear free zone signs. I think there is also Leichhardt's Going Solar, which are other signs which are actually also of equal significance to demonstrate the lead our LBA took in these things. And so I actually think these signs are of historical significance. And the graffiti has recently been rubbed off. There's lots of photographs to document that graffiti on Johnson Street. So I think that we should certainly retain the signs and should consider a report on providing additional nuclear-free zone signs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll now put the amendment moved by myself for the deletion of point 3, seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, Drury, York, McKenna, Macri. Councillor Raciti, are you in support of the amendment? Councillor Raciti? Councillor Raciti is not in attendance. So I'll just try that one more time. So I had Councillors Stamoulis, Drury, York, McKenna, Macri, and myself. All those against, please raise your hands. I have Councillors Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Kiat, Lockie, and that means that we are on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in support of the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against the amendment. That has been carried and is incorporated into the primary motion. I'll put the primary motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. We have Councillors Stamoulis, Hesse, De Cruz, Steer, Drury, Kiat, York, Lockie, McKenna. I've lost Councillor Macri, and I am also in support, so that has been carried unanimously from the councillors who are left. That has been carried. Councillors, it's time to go into confidential session.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, there is still one more item, the supplementary item.
Which is that?
The investment report.
Haven't we adopted it?
No, it's a separate report, the monthly investment report that was sent out as a supplementary agenda.
When was it distributed?
Last week, last Thursday.
I'm not in possession of it, and so would prefer to move deferral of that for the consideration at the next meeting.
Seconded. I've missed it too. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So it seems like that's agreed. I'll put the motion for deferral. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. I'll adjourn the meeting for a period of 2 minutes so that we can go into confidential session.